It is 6:30 p.m. I will call the meeting to order. We will start with a pledge of allegiance. Vice Chair Freeman, would you mind leading us this evening?
Absolutely. Place your hand over your heart and say the Pledge of Allegiance to a country which we should admire and respect. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. That will take us to roll call. Could you roll call, please?
Sorry. Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Denner?
Yes.
Director O'Brien?
Here.
Vice Chair Freeman?
Here.
Chair Gray?
Yes, here. Thank you. That will take us to item 3, agenda review.
Thank you, Chair. I might recommend to the board that item 9D be moved earlier on the agenda before item 9C. To the extent there are folks here for item 9D, that we can get them moved along. 9C may take a bit of discussion if the board's interested in that.
I'm confused. We're doing, what are you suggesting?
Item 9D, which is the agreements for the baseball leagues. I'm suggesting that we hear that one before item 9C, the Oak Park Committee discussion.
Dan, how many members do you see for that?
For item 9D?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Is anybody here for the league agreements or online? There's no one here, it doesn't matter. I was just envisioning that item 9C may take a while. And
I'm okay if we do that anyway. I mean, just in case.
Yeah.
You never know if
We can do that anyway.
We have at least 2 people here from Oak Park.
Well, if we're
We
saying,
might find out how many people we have from Oak Park. I mean,
well, I might just recommend 9D should be relatively, or 9D should be relatively quick, and 9C is going to take a while. So
I'm fine switching them if we do believe that 9D would be relatively quick. We agree it is. Okay.
I suspect it's going to be a lot quicker than 9C, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Do we need a motion on that?
Sorry. I don't think so.
yeah, I think, Chair, by consensus, you can say that the agenda order has been hereby changed by consensus to move item 9D to be heard before item 9C.
So for anybody who didn't get that, we are going to be moving item 9D prior to item 9C now on the agenda for this evening.
Correct.
Okay, any other board questions, comments, any public comment on the agenda review? Okay, that will take us to item 4, public statements for items that are not on the agenda this evening.
Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to speak on an item that's not in the agenda? Seeing none, Chair? And then Zoom, is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda?
I've not seen anybody unmute themselves or indicate otherwise. Okay, that will take us to item 5, approval of minutes for the RSRPD Board of Directors meeting from December 6th, 2023.
I'll move approval. A second.
I do have one amendment.
Any public comments?
I think, Director.
I have one amendment to suggest. On page 4 of 5, where I reported receiving an email to my personal account, it says from Mr. Stout. It's actually not a Mr. The name is Ercel, E-R-C-E-L, and I just felt because the person took the time to communicate that we get the name right. So it's Ercel, E-R-C-E-L. I would ask that the minutes be amended to reflect that. Page 4 of 5 toward the bottom, it says Director Avo reported receiving an email to his personal account, and that would be from Ercel, E-R-C-E-L Stout. It's not a Mr. It's a female. So I just wanted to have that correction.
Thank you. We'll make the correction if approved.
I would approve it. Any public comment on this item?
Not seeing any, Chair.
Could you roll call vote, please?
We need I think we need a motion and a second on the minutes as amended.
We had a motion and we had a second.
Excellent.
What, not as amended?
But as amended, though.
Amended
As
is fine.
amended.
I'm good.
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director O'Brien,
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman,
Yes.
and Chair Craig.
Aye.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Thank you. That'll take us to item 6, the consent agenda. Would anyone on the board like to remove items A or B for discussion?
I have a couple of questions on item A. This was on page, the first one was on page 1. It talks about FSA balance, FSA health. What is that? What is that FSA? I don't
I'll have
recall-
Ms. Pennington respond to the question.
I don't recall seeing it before.
You're very observant. That's our flexible spending account.
Oh, yeah.
And then it has an employee's name, so as they draw down the funds, they pay into it, and then they draw down the funds. So
Got it.
that's why it's
Okay.
recorded there.
Great, okay. And I had one other question on page, it's been outnumbered. It's item 11/28/23, 11/2/10, non-sufficient fund checks, and it was $12,270. What was that? It's page, let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4. About halfway down. And it's it's US Bank, item 11-210.
That was related to a check that was received at the golf course for a tournament, and we've since corrected that. So we
Okay.
listed as a return check, and then we received the funds back and redeposited them.
Okay, that's fine.
I had a question on the first page. Item 105330 of November 16. I was just curious, the downtown Ford auto purchase, that was a result of our bidding.
I'll have Wayne answer that question.
So this was the result of the bids we put out recently?
No, this is actually a purchase we made through CMAS 2 years ago, and the vehicle finally showed up.
Oh,
So we do owe, and it was a Ranger vehicle, which is a good thing because they need them. But it finally showed up after 2 years.
I was thinking, I was hoping that maybe it was a result of our current bidding, because there would be Ford or Chevy, which we're prepared to.
Yeah, we are currently out to bid. Bids are due January 23rd
Okay,
for 10 vehicles of mixed
thank you.
manufacturers.
Any other board questions? Any public comment on this item? I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I will make that motion.
Second?
Could you do a roll call vote, please?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director O'Brien,
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman,
Yes.
Chair Craig.
Aye.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Thank you. That'll take us to item 7, presentation of scheduled items and public hearings. 7A is presentation of the part-time employee of the month for November 2023 to Ashlyn Gee, lifeguard.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Pennington will provide staff's report.
Thank you, Chair Gray and members of the board. The part-time employee of the month for November 2023 is Ashley G. Ashley's a lifeguard with the Recreation Department. She's worked for the district for over 1 year, and this is her first Employee of the Month award. The person who submitted the nomination stated, Ashlyn is a dedicated and responsible employee who takes pride in assuring that our community has a pleasant and safe experience at the Rancho Pool. She puts an emphasis on fun. Being a swim teacher this past summer, Ashlyn was a wonderful mentor to the new swim instructors, teaching by example and providing positive reinforcement. She's also a team player, volunteering to take shifts when needed and providing overall help and support, such as setting up and breaking down equipment or just being proactive and tending to patrons. Ashlyn's kind, respectful, and an overall joy to work with. She is well liked by kids and parents. For these reasons, she is deserving of the Employee of the Month award, and I'd like to welcome Ashlyn and her family tonight. Congratulations.
Hi, thank you for having me and for this recognition. I really love my job and I get excited to go to work every day. I have great coworkers who make long shifts and challenging days more enjoyable and who I have strong and lasting friendships with. I'm also very grateful for my managers who provide our work environment with all the tools we need to be successful and make it a really positive place to work. And obviously for Aaron and Sarah who do everything for us and are the best bosses I could ask for. I play water polo and swim for Royal, so I'm really at the pool all the time. And I'm excited for the construction to be over so that we can get back. Thank you.
Would the board or a member of staff?
So I'll say something. Yeah, hearing that you have a lot of great qualities, but what impresses me most, and I think a lot of people know I really appreciate this, is the way that you acknowledge your colleagues and your coworkers. You have a great attitude. You obviously have a great future. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would actually comment on the same thing. It shows, your attitude shows, and I'm sure it goes through the whole staff, and everybody loves being at their job. And thank you very much for being there.
Thank you.
You want to introduce your family?
My parents are here.
If there's no more comment, maybe we can get a photo with the board.
Before that photo, I've had the privilege of teaching Ashlyn, and I found her to be thoughtful, humble, funny, and very well respected by staff at Royal High School. And lastly, I also agree with you that she has a bright future ahead of her.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I can't be there tonight, but thank you for all your work. And thank you for everything you do for the district and the community.
Wayne, do you want to do honors?
Thanks to the group, right? No, that's, we won't. Yeah, one more.
First look at mom.
We'll get one of your camera even if you need to. Yeah.
All right.
Those two.
You guys want, yeah, please join them.
Mom and dad up there, yeah.
Yeah, yes.
It's not our award, it's her award.
Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much.
All right, my turn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, where you are.
Thanks. We have one more, Dan, we have one more comment.
Okay.
I can sit.
No, go ahead.
Do you want to give public comment?
I would, thank you. I just wanted to share a couple things. One, I think it's very obvious how much Ashlyn is loved on our team and how amazing her family is that they're here tonight to support her. And they're not just here tonight, they're on the pool deck often and doing a lot of things that will support Royal High School athletics and our district. So a lot of the things that were said about her being dedicated and responsible are very true. I get a little choked up about her, so I apologize, but she is just the leader today and of tomorrow, and if more of our staff were like Ashlyn, I just am so proud of what she's going to do in the future. I was telling Teresa earlier, everybody mark this day down because when Ashlyn grows up, she's going to do big things, and we're really going to be proud to say that she's working for our district. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much again, and thank you for all the work you do for the park district. That will take us to item 7B, presentation of the 2023 Part-Time Employee of the Year, David Curran, Park Ranger.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Pennington will provide staff's report.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to announce Ranger David Curran as the part-time employee of the year for 2023. Ranger Curran has worked for the district for 2 years. He's a dedicated, hardworking employee who steps up to assist every time he's asked to cover a shift and is actively involved in community events and public relations. Ranger Curran participated in the Simi Valley Police Department's Easter Parade and in the National Night Out event. He's often seen handing out junior park ranger stickers to children in the parks. David has high standards and advocates for improvements within the ranger program. He's a great asset to the district and the communities we serve. Congratulations, Park Ranger David Curran, the recipient of the 2023 Part-Time Employee of the Year Award.
Thank you guys, it's quite an honor. Like I said before, I'm really happy to be here. I love it here. I love the community, the parks. I like Wayne for getting us a new car. If I was him, I would have taken more credit, but it's a great place to be. And very supportive. I love you guys supportive of the Park Ranger program. Dan, Teresa, the board. It really helps us a lot and the community. Thank you guys.
If I could just make one comment, I feel like we're congratulating you a bunch of times on this. That's cool. I think that's really great. You deserve it. Again, another example of someone who has a great attitude, a hard worker. And I just want to say, if you have any doubt about the great attitude, I asked him how things were when we were walking in together this evening, and he said perfect. And I'm still struggling with that one. That what a great attitude Deputy Curran has. Congratulations.
I'm a better board member because of you spending time educating us and letting us go on ride-alongs, giving us feedback, whether it's just at an event at City Hall and interacting with the community. I appreciate that. And I want you to know, as you already said, but we got your back, and law enforcement's important to us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for everything you do. I absolutely appreciate how much you bring items up to board members and advocate for your fellow park rangers as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Feel safe.
Only because my son's back there.
Yeah.
Do you want him to join the section?
Come on, son.
Yeah, there we go.
Nice.
That's my favorite son.
The one that's here.
I only have one.
That's your only one,
That's why
right?
he's
Yeah,
my favorite. You're not supposed to have favorites.
Well, it's kind of hard when there's only one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Congratulations. Thank you. Anytime you want to come, just tell the chief and jump in the car. We're ready for you.
Thanks, Dave. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
When he says jump in the car, if you jump in the back, he will walk you in.
Yeah.
So just be careful with that.
Thank you again. That will take us to item 7C, presentation of the 2023 Full-Time Employee of the Year, Santiago Jimenez, Buildings Maintenance Worker 2.
Yes, Santiago Jimenez has worked for the district for 8 years and has worked in many capacities within the planning and maintenance department. He handles most paint projects and graffiti removal throughout the park district. Santi's professional, reliable, and a responsible employee. He works weekends and makes sure the facilities in the morning are ready to go for the afternoon shift. Santi gets along with coworkers and they praise him for his hard work and dedication. And he was recently promoted to Buildings Maintenance Worker 2, so he may have new responsibilities now. Please join me in congratulating Santi on his award for 2023 Full-Time Employee of the Year Award. Yes.
Good evening, members of the board, staff. I'd just like to say thank you. I enjoy working here, as my previous colleagues that have been up here said. It's a great place to work. I enjoy coming here every day. I like my coworkers that I work with under the building maintenance department and also grounds. And I just want to give a shout out to them because without them, I think the they're vital to making the parks run and making the community a better place. So I just want to just say thank you to them, and also give recognition to former employees that have been here under the building maintenance, Jim Johnson, John Dodson, and everybody else that I work with on a daily basis. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll get a picture.
Congratulations, and I think anyone who's heard me speak before knows I think our maintenance workers are definitely our unsung heroes out there. You do make our parks go, and it's so neat to see you get this award. Congratulations.
I know you know it, but I want you to know that I realize it too, that when a park is clean and safe, that the community feels welcome there, and they're welcome to recreate and have fun and relax outdoors. And I know a lot of that work gets done before the last bell of the school day rings, and by the time they get to the park, it's already set up for them, so I appreciate it.
And let me just say that to be recognized by your fellow employees as Employee of the Year is a great honor, and I'm sure very well deserved.
Thank you.
Yes. Should we get a picture?
Yeah, I'll just add quickly another congratulations, and I hope you did hear about all the hooting and hollering that happened at the holiday party when your name was announced. That was quite a cheer.
Yes.
Congratulations again, and well deserved.
Yes, congratulations.
We're not gonna let him get away that fast.
Oh.
Santiago's a good man. He's a very quiet individual. He doesn't say anything. He just comes to work and does his job. Everybody knows, as Teresa said, he has been recently promoted to building maintenance too. What they didn't explain is that he is now in charge of our deferred maintenance team of two, which will be doing most of the deferred maintenance projects. And he's got a nice sized budget to work with, which is a little over $1.3 million. So he's going to be out there painting, fixing, doing everything. I know he just repainted Mayfair Bridge, or he gave it a real shot job on it, as I call it. But it looks a lot better. He's been here for quite a while. He's been our custodian on weekends. He volunteers for Veterans Day. He volunteers for all kinds of activities. This individual here earned his BM2 position. I'm proud to say that. And I'm sure that Robert would be here saying something, but I don't think he knew that you became Employee of the Year. I was surprised.
No, you know.
Yeah? Oh, you know. Oh, then why isn't he here? But I'm glad that you got it. Congratulations.
Wayne, we got one more.
Oh.
Oh, no.
We got a line here.
Is this thing on? Press the button. All right. I've known Santi for quite a bit of time as a friend and as a coworker, and this guy is probably the most underrated employee I've ever seen, in the sense of he can do it all. He actually got hired as a I don't know if a lot of people know, he got hired as a groundskeeper first, went back to buildings, got hired again as a groundskeeper, kept getting promoted, came back to buildings, did the weekend schedule, and now is a BMM2, building maintenance worker 2, which is well deserved. It's just one of those things that you can tell him to do anything, and he will do it, find out how to do it, and that's one of the reasons he did shout outs to our old employees, because he took advantage of them mentoring him, and he's one of those people that listens to everybody, is patient, like learned all the stuff, like everything he does was from past experiences, and as well as his desire to learn and grow with the company. And I'm proud to have a coworker like him, a friend like him. So he's out of one person that deserves this the most, it's Santi. So congratulations, Santi. So.
Two things make me smile, talking about the people in this department and fishing. Congratulations.
It's very important. Very important to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, what's the...
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. Yes.
Thank you again for all the work that you do for the community, for the Park District, and for all the residents here. That will take us to item 8, which is continued business, which there is none, which takes us to item 9, new business. A, authorization to waive district purchasing policy and award the Strathern Adobe Wall Repair Project to Eagle Restoration Group, Inc. from Arcadia, California, based on competitive written price quotes.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Jennifer Santos will present staff's report.
Good evening, Chair Gray and members of the board. The Simi Adobe is one of the oldest buildings in the Simi Valley and has the exterior walls made of adobe block and mortar with a plaster finish to protect the walls. Over the years, the north wall has developed cracks and portions of the lime plaster finish have deteriorated. Lime plaster coatings are standard in historic adobe buildings and tend to develop cracks easily and require routine maintenance. To ensure the longevity of the historic adobe buildings, securing services from a preservationist proficient in adobe preservation is recommended. Staff researched local companies specializing in this type of work and found only a few companies. Staff contacted the companies and received 2 written price quotes for around $35,000 and one for around $50,000. The proposed work will include removing the failing plaster, evaluating the adobe block for any damage, and replacing the wall plaster finish. Both of the responding companies specialize in adobe restoration, and Eagle Restoration Group submitted the lowest written price quote. Due to the field's specialized nature and a limited number of companies that perform this type of work, staff requests the board authorization to waive the district's purchasing policy, which requires solicitation of public bids for the purchase of the work over $25,000. Based on the received quotes, staff also requests that the board award the Strathern Adobe Wall Repair Project to Eagle Restoration Group. Alternatively, the board could deny staff's request to waive the district's purchasing policy and the award to Eagle Restoration Group for the Strathern Adobe Wall Repair and direct staff to solicit public bids for this project. For fiscal year 23-24, $30,000 was allocated for the wall repair under the district's general fund for one-time expenditures. Additional funds to complete this project can be absorbed in the planning and maintenance general fund budget for contract services. To conclude, staff requests that the board waive the district's purchasing policy requiring competitive bidding for purchases and or work over $25,000 for the adobe wall repair and award the repair work to Eagle Restoration Group in the amount of $35,400 and to perform the work with the issuance of a purchase order, or deny staff's request to waive the district's purchasing policy and the award to Eagle Restoration Group for the Strathern Adobe Wall and direct staff to solicit bids. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Any board questions?
I have a question. The Simi Adobe is, what is its function in Strathern? Is it strictly for tourism? Does it have any other function?
It was, so the CMAW was the first Adobe building on the Strathern Ranch, and when the Strathern family came, they built the home on it. So it's used for tours. It's part of the historical building in the park there. So it's part of the main home, actually, of the Strathern house.
So is it used beyond tours, or is it strictly for tours?
No, it's beyond tours. It's part of it's a living museum. So the building, like all buildings on site, they require repair and maintenance over time.
And are you asking
I would also throw in weddings.
I'm sorry, they have weddings there, venues, events, the facility is rented out.
So that is the building that's used for weddings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to
venue,
clarify.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? Any public comment on this item? Not seeing anybody on Zoom, and I'm not seeing anybody.
There's nobody here for public comment, Chair.
Okay. Any board comments on this item?
I just would like to encourage the board to accept this. I mean, it's a historic building, and when it's gone, if something happens to it, it can't be replaced. So it's very important to our historical park.
I would like to move that we waive the district's purchasing policy and to award the Adobe repair project to Eagle Restoration.
I'll second that.
Thank you. A roll call vote, please.
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Jenners?
Yes.
Director O'Brien?
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman?
Yes.
Chair Gray?
Aye.
Motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much. That will take us to item 9B, review and consideration of Resolution 2070, modifying District Policy Manual, Chapter 12, Facility Use Fees and Conditions, including proposed increase in the district's facility use fees.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Zach Miller, the District's Director of Recreation, will provide staff's report.
Good evening, Chair Gray and Board of Directors. Tonight, we are here to discuss our facility use fees throughout the district. For some historical review, in December of 2020, we had no increases in facility fees due to COVID-19. In December of 2021, fees were increased by 6% by the board. And in last year's consideration of this item, rental rates related to the fee structure were increased by 3% for youth-related fees and by 6% for all other facilities. This evening, we're asking for direction or a preferred alternative for the facility fees for 2024. The district's operating budget increased 6.2% in fiscal year 22-23 and is anticipated to increase by approximately 12.1% this fiscal year, which is an estimated 18% increase over the 2-year period, or an average of 9.15% to be more exact, over the last 2-year period. This is primarily the result of increased labor, utility, and insurance costs. In your board packet this evening, attachments A through 3 show 3 different levels of proposed increases at 3%, 6%, and 9%. The board can consider one of these to be implemented as drafted or give us direction in detail on how they would like to consider fee increases, if at all. The percentages in your attachment may vary slightly due to rounding of full dollars, so there are some differences between some of the fees when you don't get to the full amount. So tonight, your alternatives are as follows. You could approve a 3% increase to the facility use fee schedule, approve a 6% increase, approve a 9% increase, choose not to increase fees in the fee schedule, or provide other direction to staff. Staff is recommending the board select the preferred alternative and consider approving resolution number 2070, modifying District Policy Manual, Chapter 12, Facility Use, Fees, and Conditions, and authorization for the district manager to proceed with the implementation of this update to the district's policy manual. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Board questions?
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Ed.
So Zach, I think I know this, but I just want to make sure. The recommendation on the 9% increase, how was that 9% recommendation arrived at?
So when we looked at the trend of the increase in the budget over time and realized that we were averaging about 9% over the past 2 years, we considered that as an option for you guys to consider this evening.
Okay, and then my next question is, and I'm not trying to get ahead of ourselves here, but I'm just trying to do it for purposes of comparison. For the fees for the sports leagues that we're going to do later, the recommended amount of increase there, if I did my math correctly, is about 3.3%. Is that correct?
I didn't prepare the math. It's $50 per field on about 1,500. Yeah, so I think you're pretty close there.
3.3%. And I asked this question last year, and if I recall, it was not a significant amount. But hypothetically speaking, if we were to raise, from a general point of view, the facility fees by 9%, but increase it only by 3% for the youth sports fees, how much of a difference in revenue would that be? In terms of the overall revenue amount, I assume it's not that significant.
I can help if you need me.
Yeah, I might defer to the district manager on this one.
I believe our field fee revenue is about $250,000. So beyond the agreements that we have with the leagues, which are separate, we also rent fields for all other sports. I believe the revenue from that's about $250,000. So it'd be the difference of, it'd be 6%, the difference between 3 or 9% on $250,000.
Let me just understand, is the $250,000 for all of the fields or just for the youth sports?
That's for all of the fields.
So the youth sports amount would be significantly less than that.
What do you think? How much do you think youth sports rentals represented the total, Zach, on a percentage basis?
I would guess probably 50 to 60%.
That's right, I was going to say about 50, yeah, that's a good
About
point,
half.
yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other board questions? I can ask one. Zach, after last year where we did the 3% for youth under 18 and 6% on all other facilities, what kind of feedback did you see? Did you see any impact to fewer folks who were willing to rent facilities? What was your general consensus of how that decision impacted our facility use?
Yeah, so I believe we didn't receive a lot of pushback. Obviously, inflation was hitting the whole country kind of at the same time, so we did get a little bit of pushback on certain rentals from certain folks. But I would say across the board, it was not a lot of pushback. Fairly well received by the community. I mean, I don't know that they even recognized it on some of our lower fees, Director Gray. We're talking about the difference of 50 cents, maybe $1. On our bigger rentals, our gymnasiums, our things like that, it's a little bit more significant, but most of these fees that we're charging are in the $10 to $30 range for a facility, and so you're only talking about $1 or $2, fairly minimal impact to the community that's rented.
Chair, if I could add on to that, just in the bigger picture in terms of our rental fee revenue, it has been increasing. We've been marketing and promoting the district rentals in our facilities a lot more than we have in the past. And just anecdotally, I can say that there's a lot of people that are discovering the facilities we have and that are available to the community. So just in the bigger picture, we are increasing there. Likewise, a few years ago, and we haven't updated it lately, but I think it still holds true, is that we did benchmark against some neighboring communities, and we were below the average on small rooms, large rooms. We did a comparison of different facilities, and we were below the average of the benchmark survey at the time. Just a piece of information to consider.
Yeah, thank you. Dan, to follow up on that, for the increase in, I think you referenced profit. I don't know if you have numbers on this, but what would you or Zach, if you'd like to chime in, how much would you attribute the growth to new marketing versus the increase of fees in the last few years?
Let's see, we've gone up 10%. Probably about, I would guess about half from marketing and half from the fee increase, I would say. We are doing more rentals, but we also did the fee increase. So I would say that's a little, haven't done a detailed analysis, but I would say it's probably about half, because I think the total growth is about 12% or so, 10 or 12. So if the fees went up last year 6, I'm guessing the other half was from increased rentals.
Thank you. I can ask one more question, but I've done 2. Are there any other board questions right now? I'll ask one more quick one. Zach, it says it will vary slightly due to rounding, and the intent is to use whole dollars. In that instance, since this is only either, some of the recommendations are 3, 6, and 9%, at what point did you, or the people writing the offer or the opportunities, at what point did you potentially round up? If you're only doing cents, was it oftentimes just rounding down anyways? How do you calculate that versus what that increase should be?
Yeah, great question. So I keep a running tab of where our fee increases have hit, including 2 decimal points. So like on a $10 fee, I'll keep $10.30. If you guys go up by 3, 6, or 9 today, it'll be $10.60, let's say, and therefore it would go to 11 on your schedule. So I'm keeping kind of track of the pennies, if you will, and rounding to the nearest dollar up or down on over 50 cents or not. So some of these fees, even though you've raised fees, like I say, on these lower numbers, you've not even made it up a full dollar over the last couple of years because of just the nature of how low the fees were to begin with.
Thank you. Any other board questions before we move to public comment? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Not seeing anybody on mute. Anybody in person?
There is.
We do have someone here, Chair.
Okay. Just because this is our first public comment, just want to remind everybody, anybody giving public comment, you have 3 minutes in which to give public comment.
This is not for
And yes. Staff will let you know.
Yeah, you want to wait on that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, he's here for the field fees, so we'll wait. He's here for the next item. Yeah.
Sound good? Okay. Last call for public comment. Assuming nobody else is walking out, still nobody unmuting on Zoom. Okay. Any board comments?
Yeah, I'm inclined to stay with the 6% increase. We did that last year and didn't get pushback, and we're increasing our rentals, our revenue from rentals. So that seems like a good, solid number. I also think if we're going to raise the assessment every year, we should also raise fees. So, that's my comment.
Chair?
Yeah.
So I'll chime in. Yeah, I'm okay with, in light of what the analysis on the budget increases we've had over the past 2 years, I'm okay with either a 6% or a 9% increase in general. However, whatever we choose, I would not be able to support any more than a 3% increase in terms of the youth sports. It doesn't take a significant chunk out of the revenue, and it would be consistent with what we're going to have as a recommendation on the youth sports leagues, and it would also be consistent with the theme that we've had here on the board, supporting our youth. So I'm okay with either the 6% or 9% increase in general. However, I could not support any more than a 3% increase as it pertains to youth sports.
Director Denner?
Sure, Greg. When I review the variations on the 3 options, it seems to me when I look at the 9%, there isn't any fee that would, there's not an increase that would make it difficult for someone to use the facility or participate. I mean, the amounts are really insignificant, maybe a couple dollars as you look through it and compare the 3, 6, and 9. And so I'm comfortable with the 9. When you really look at the numbers, it's really insignificant on as a per use basis. I mean, it's not that high. And I think we're in a good ballpark in terms of competition, if you will, for other facilities.
Director Denner?
Nothing to add.
Director Dinner has nothing, Chair.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Director Abla. I'm also fine with a higher increase, but would still want to try and minimize impact to youth fees. So in light of that, I'd be fine going with the 9% and then keep youth under 18 rates, increasing that at a lower pace.
I mean, inflation
So
has been
with-
going up at 2 to 3%.
So with that, I'll make a motion that we approve a 9% increase to facility fees in general, but a 3% increase for
I'll
youth
second that.
activities. I wasn't on the microphone. Let me repeat that. I didn't have my microphone on, I'm sorry. So the motion is to increase by 9% facility use fees in general, but to only increase the youth activities fees 3%.
And then Vice Chair Freeman seconded.
Yeah.
Before we vote on that, Vice Chair Freeman was saying something about inflation I wanted to hear.
No, I was just saying, if you look over the last 5 years, it's 39% because everything is compounded. Even though it says 2% a month, it's still compounded. So if you look at what the state's done and others in terms of fees and rates because of the 39% total. So I think 9% is fair
Yeah.
representation of what's going on in the world.
Any other board comment? Okay, let's do the vote.
Director Avila.
Aye.
Director Jennert.
Yes.
Director O'Brien.
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman.
Yes.
Chair Wright.
Aye.
Motion carries with unanimous vote.
Thank you. That will take us to item 9.3, approval priority use agreements for use of recreational facilities by Santa Susana Baseball League, Simi Valley Baseball League, Simi Youth Baseball, and Simi Valley Girls Softball League.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Miller provides staff's report.
Good evening, Chair Gray, Board of Directors. This item is to consider and renew our annual priority use agreements with our local baseball and softball leagues. All organizations have agreements that expire at the end of this year. Expiring agreements are Santa Susana Baseball League's use of Houghton Schreiber Park, Simi Valley Baseball League's use of Bear Volunteer Park, Simi Youth Baseball's use of Knowles and Santa Susana Park, not their big facility, obviously, and Simi Valley Girls Softball use of the maintained softball fields at Big Sky Park. Staff has communicated tonight's board item to each of the league presidents and has had no specific feedback from the leagues on the options that were presented before the board. They are aware that in recent history, the board has increased field rates by $50 per year and have been able to absorb those costs in their league's financial structure. In your packets this evening are renewal permit agreements for the above-mentioned organizations to allow the continued use of Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District's facilities for scheduled league play and activities. These agreements all for 1 year ending December 31st, 2024. So tonight we're looking for the board to consider the following options. Option 1, $50 increase per field, meaning each field will be $1,500 annually for the field's use. Option number 2, no increase to the annual field costs in 2024. Option number 3 is some other number or general direction provided to staff. We are recommending tonight that the board approve the above-mentioned priority use agreements for Santa Susana Baseball League, Simi Youth Baseball, Simi Valley Baseball League, and Simi Valley Girls Softball League, and authorization for the district manager to execute the agreements on behalf of the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. Staff recommends the board provides direction regarding suggested increases in fees for each group that uses the facilities in Simi Valley. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Director Miller, if you could expand upon the outreach you've done with the groups.
Yeah, so we've been prepping for this item since back in November. So initially I had sent emails to all the league presidents in November, made them aware that this was going to be coming before the board at one of our meetings in December. As we honed in on the date, I've received emails and spoken to most of the league presidents. I think we have representatives from Houghton, Santa Susana, and Simi Valley Little League here this evening. I spoke with Ty at Simi Youth Baseball. He understands the board has to consider this item and is open to any kind of option you have. Obviously, no league wants their fees increased. I think that was a general sentiment across the board, as nobody likes higher fees, but they understand that there are certain things that need to happen and need to occur for business to go forward. So there are a few items of maintenance of each of these facilities as part of these contracts that I'm sure we'll be working on with these leagues as we go into the new year. Some maintenance on fencing and drainage and things of that nature that we've been trying to work through with them as well. I think there might be a couple folks that are going to speak behind me tonight, but I think in general we've done everything we can to let them know that this was going to be before you guys this evening.
Any board questions? Okay. That'll take us to public comment. Would anybody like to make a public comment on this item? Just as a reminder for anybody speaking, you have 3 minutes. That'll go for everybody. Please make sure the mic is on.
Thank you, Chair. I have a speaker card from David. How do you pronounce your last name, sir?
It's John.
David Jen.
And I'm representing Simi Valley Baseball League. First, I want to thank you all for this time, and thank you for the continued support, not just for our league, but youth sports in general. As you all know, sports is a big part of Simi Valley, and youth sports is a tremendous tool for our youth here in our town, and I'm very grateful for your support. And in terms of my comment, I can't turn my head and speak into the mic. I do recognize the need for the increase in fee, and we have discussed it within our board. I've discussed it with other league leaders, and I think this is an acceptable increase, and we're grateful that you're capping it at a certain amount. I believe it's about 3.3%. Compared to other increases in costs other increases that you're proposing to various different activities. This is a relatively low increase, and we're grateful for that. Now, that said, we've had to increase our fees to our members because, as you all know, everything has gone up. So we do need to communicate to our members that as part of those increases, there is increase in the rent, the lease of the fields as well. So just wanted you to be aware. As part of that difference in the increases in fees, so you're increasing adult leagues and adult activities a certain amount. I've heard 9%. That's pretty significant. I'm sure that is also somewhat offsetting the limited increase for the youth leagues. I just ask that same amount of care is given to the youth leagues, despite the fact that you're bringing in less revenue from the youth leagues. The last couple years, and including, it seems like today as well as for the next few months, weather is going to be a major issue for us, and that has caused some damage to our fields. I'm sure you've heard the damage done to the Simi Youth facility as well earlier this spring. And we just ask that care be given. And we are working with the administrators on specific lists of items, and we just ask that we can continue to work through those items. Thank you.
I have a question, pardon.
Yes.
How many members do you have?
We have, it fluctuates, and COVID did a number on all the leagues. Thankfully, the very young, the 3-year-olds, the 4-year-olds are now coming back, or they're getting introduced to youth sports, whether it's baseball, softball, or soccer. So we're seeing our numbers increase, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and we're still collecting
Just
membership.
a ballpark.
Ballpark, it's about 350, between 350 to 400.
How much do each of those people pay? Is
It
per
varies
child,
depending
or is
on
it per
age.
family?
We do have a family max, and we do have several families that have multiple children in our league. The family max at the moment is $450.
How much?
$450. The breakdown varies depending on age. We go from $150 in T-ball, which is the 4 and 6-year-olds, all the way up to $285 for our high school prep, which is the 13 to 15-year-old, or I'm sorry, 16-year-old age group. And we tend to skew more top-heavy, meaning we have more in the high school prep division than the younger divisions. So the revenue is more top-heavy.
So what's your budget then?
This year's annual budget is $235,000.
Okay.
And we have some in reserves that we've been
So the
contributing and pulling from. I'm
the
sorry.
district property is a rather small portion of your budget.
It is a small portion. That is very true. Total, we're projecting $6,000 in terms of.
I mean, I'm glad we can do it, but I want to make clear that I think the district's being very generous with the way.
Absolutely, and for which I'm very, very grateful.
They all know that I've thought that maybe we're partners in this and maybe there should be a higher fee, but I understand
Right.
everything's going up. But it just seems that maybe in the future, that as part of the staff report, we have each league's number of membership, what the fees are, and what their budget is.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
we have a better perspective on what we're improving.
And we give reports on rough head count every spring for various purposes, but we do share those numbers. I also would want to comment that there are certain, as part of the lease agreement, there are certain maintenance aspects that are the league's responsibility. So what do you call it, the permittee is responsible. We are responsible for. Also, there's responsibility of the park districts. So, namely, fences and outfield grass, maintenance, reseeding, fertilizing, and mowing. There have been certain, due to weather or some other unknown causes, there have been damages that we had to take on just because the park district is very backlogged, and we understand that. So we're working through those things, and we've had to incur pretty significant costs for maintenance and upkeep.
I
Also.
understand it's a partnership, and I
Yes.
appreciate that you guys step in when you do,
Mhm.
but just for the future, so that we kind of have a better handle on what each week is,
Mhm.
budget is, and number of players, and
Sure.
okay.
And as I said, the number is trending upward, so our budget will have to increase. And as part of that, there will be greater wear to the fields. So we just ask that there would be further partnership and collaboration.
You still sell gut busters?
We do, but it's off menu. We'll talk about that separately.
You just work the booth.
Okay. So thank you. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you.
And I don't know if there's anyone else from the other leagues.
I'll ask. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other public comment on this item?
Seeing none here in the room, Chair.
Okay, I'm seeing none on Zoom. So that I will close public comment. Any board comment?
I like the progress that we're making and doing our best to keep sports fees inexpensive for youth. I know it's not always possible to not have an increase. I do like the idea for future board reports just to include the participants. Not that that means that we should or should not raise them more or less, but just to get a clear idea of how much we're costing each person. So if we're costing each person $1, $5, or $10, that would help me understand the issue. And I plan to support this motion, support this board report. But with that added one gut buster for Elaine, I don't know if we could put that in there, but just one.
Chair Gray?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, yeah, I'm comfortable with the $50 increase, and I appreciate the candid comments from the speaker and understanding the need for the increase. The only thing I'll say is I don't see it as being generous. I think, again, considering that it's youth sports, I think it's equitable. An increase certainly is appropriate under the current economic conditions, but I would never want to err toward the higher side when it comes to youth activities or youth sports. So I support the increase, and I feel, as opposed to being generous, I feel it's an equitable amount.
Any other board comments? No. I'll second Director Avila's comments and entertain a motion.
I will move to do alternate number one, $50 increase per field to $1,500 annually.
I'll second.
Do a vote, please.
Director Avila?
Aye.
Director Dennert?
Yes.
Director O'Brien?
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman?
Yes.
Chair Gray?
Aye.
The motion carries with unanimous vote.
Thank you. That'll take us to item 9C, discussion and direction regarding the composition, structure, and scope of the park.
Chair Gray, I'd like to request a 5-minute recess before we start this item.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you.
A 5-minute recess and return at 7:33. That will take us to item 9C, discussion and direction regarding the composition, structure, and scope of the Oak Park and Recreation Planning Committee, including direction regarding the election or appointment of committee members.
Thank you, Chair. Dan Pernick, District Manager. I will provide the report. The Oak Park and Recreation Planning Committee was established by the district quite a while ago to make recommendations to your board, advisory recommendations regarding park and recreation operations impacting the Oak Park area of the district. Director Dennert had asked that an item be placed on the agenda for the board to discuss the composition, structure, and scope of the committee's work. With that, the items before you for discussion. There are several alternatives to provide direction regarding changing the scope and composition of the committee. You could not make any changes to it or provide staff with other directions. It's staff's recommendation that the board discuss and provide direction regarding the composition, structure, and scope of the committee. That concludes staff report. I will add on We're not operating the committee. The guidelines for the committee and what was established years ago are attached to your report. I wouldn't say we are operating that committee. It has grown larger than the original intent of what the committee was. I also understand that originally the committee was formed when Oak Park was growing, and we were building parks in Oak Park. And the primary purpose of establishing the committee was to get input on capital projects, on design and things like that. And it has really grown a lot in scope in terms of, and gotten kind of away from what the intent of the committee was, as I understand it. Not to say that, you know, the committee's valuable to us, but it has had mission creep, so to speak.
I have
over
to
the
stop you.
years.
When you say we're not operating that committee,
Yeah, just in a way, like for example, the guidelines say we're supposed to send a note taker or a secretary over there to attend their notes, and it's basically we send all of our staff and do full staff reports and all of that. That was not the original intent of the committee. It was just for them to take up items, meet, give you guys some input on feedback over there, and the scope in which we're doing that is not, that the current contribution we're making to the committee is well beyond the original scope as outlined in the guidelines, as an example. That concludes staff's report.
Now,
Any more questions?
I have a question. If we were to say to leave the Oak Park Committee the way it is, we'd have to start doing one for every single, now that we're going to district elections.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to do one for every district.
That's somewhat a philosophical discussion and it's policy decision, but now that we have districts, if you have a district, if you have a committee within a district, it could be perceived as reporting to that single district. And it could raise philosophical issues around fairness because you wouldn't have necessarily a committee in every other district unless you formed a committee in every other district. So those are the kind of philosophical discussions I think that Mr. Dinner put the item on for to talk about.
if I could follow up on Kate's question, because I think that's an excellent question. Just as a point of example, and just going about from the discussion that we had on districting and nothing else, just on that alone. But theoretically, if residents of Wood Ranch wanted us to form a committee, now that we're going to districting, we would have to give that consideration. If residents of Bridle Path wanted us to form a committee, we'd have to give that consideration. If my colleague and friend over here in the Texas tract, if he had residents in the Texas tract that wanted to form a committee, we would have to give consideration to that. If people in my neighborhood and neighboring neighborhoods want to do that, we would have to give consideration to that.
Correct.
Is that right?
If there's a committee within District 5 for District 5, I think there would be an expectation that other residents would also be expecting a committee and that kind of input from their neighborhood or their area or their district.
I think that we need more, let's assume that the committee stays in place. We have not been clear to them, I don't think, spelling out what their responsibilities are. We don't say, review the budget, review our board agendas each meeting, be prepared to share that information with your community. We haven't spelled out exactly what their charge is. And I'm sure that that's probably contributed to maybe the committee not functioning as well as it should. I think we should lay out exactly what we expect of the committee.
Chair, I'm sorry, this is time for questions, correct?
We should be focused on questions and
Sorry.
then take the public comment and then have discussion.
So I put this item on the agenda and I have some questions, but my questions now is partially for the people that participate in the meeting I see on Zoom, so they understand why I put it on the agenda a little bit, so if they give us feedback on that. But I have some questions, Dan, about the election. I would say it's not an election. I am asking a question, but the reason is we don't check the registered voters. Is that true?
That is correct.
So as far as you know, people might not be registered voters at
I'll
all?
have Zach help me on this. My understanding is that when we hold the ballot or the election, we've done it at the community center recently. We have the person submit a ballot and they identify their address. We don't validate whether or not that address is valid, nor do we identify whether or not they're registered voters.
That's correct. So we do use a paper ballot system. It's really, someone comes into the front desk and asks for a ballot to vote. We provide them a ballot with the names of the nominees and allow for write-in candidates. They return the ballot to us and we count the ballot at the end of the election period. So we do no confirmation of residency or voter registration.
Oh, we don't do check voter registration?
No, we do not.
And then my next question for you is, under our current policies, if a 17-year-old went in to vote, can they vote? Because I don't see anything in the policy that says one way or another, so if we turn them away.
Right. In fact, I would say it's, we would probably, we don't even check ID. We may check ID. I mean, this voting process has been, I mean, we're talking about a small subsection of the community that votes here. I think to put it in reference, I think the winning elected officials had in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 votes last election. So you're right. There's no guarantee that someone underage couldn't vote in this election.
We're going to change that. If a 5-year-old walked in to vote, you can't stop them from voting, can you? It doesn't say they can't vote. It doesn't say you have to be a registered voter.
The committee's bylaws have no direction or give staff no direction in that regard. Yeah.
And then you said some of the winning votes might have been like 10 to 15 votes, possibly 30 or 40.
Yeah, that's correct. In my recollection of the few years that I've been in charge of this, COVID was very small. Obviously, people weren't coming out of their house to vote at that point. I believe in the last election, I think the vote getters were in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 votes, I would say, and I can follow up with exact numbers for you after this meeting.
But they can't vote by email, or nor can they vote by mail.
No, that's correct. It's in-person voting.
So the reason I ask is in California, I could vote by mail, except people in Oak Park can't on this one issue, but they could vote by mail on all other issues.
That's fair. Yes.
Dinner, if I could, sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to read from the guidelines what it says relative to election. It says the method in place for election of members at large shall be the responsibility of the Oak Park Park and Recreation Committee. That's all it says relative to the formal direct guidelines that the board adopted years ago.
And then for our next meeting, which is in January, for the Oak Park Advisory Committee, for that meeting, Dan or Zach, do you guys know what are some of the requested items for that?
We've had a meeting at the staff level of some items that we propose will be on the agenda, and we've taken some feedback from some of the committee members already, but nothing's been finalized for their agenda at this point.
From the committee members, do you have any memory of what those might be?
I believe at least one of the committee's members asked about specifics into the budget, some expenditure questions, some ownership and property questions are proposed in that, and some other smaller items, I would say.
For the members of the committee participating, you might notice from my questions, I was asking about the structure of the committee, the process and all that, but I didn't put it on the agenda. Since I put it on the agenda, I'm going to say I didn't put it on the agenda to necessarily eliminate it, but just to talk about that process. But I didn't know all the things that we might do because we're a board, and I could speak to one other board member outside of a meeting, so I didn't know if the board was interested in modifying it all or completely or none, anywhere in between. That's all my questions for now.
Any other board questions? Okay, that'll take us to public comment. Is there anybody in person or filled out a speaker card?
I have nobody in person in the room that would like to speak to the item that I can see, Chair.
Okay, then I'm going to assume at least some of the folks here on the Zoom would be interested in making public comment. If you'd like to either raise your hand or unmute yourself, this is an opportunity to speak on this item.
Hey, it's Harry. I don't know if you can Harry.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Dan Cooper unfortunately couldn't make this meeting tonight. I do think that Brian Denner, by your own admission, that we didn't really understand what this topic on the agenda was about. You didn't fully fill it out. I mean, what I just basically saw is there's three things you could do. You could leave it alone, you could change it, or get rid of it. And I saw on the agenda item, it sounded like you want to just leave it alone. But some of the questions you guys are asking are kind of existential about the future of the committee. I have one question for Dan Perinack, which is, if this is something as substantial as getting rid of the Oak Park community or substantially revising it, why were we shoved till later in the agenda when there's 4 people from Oak Park in this meeting? I'm not sure why we had to wait 20 extra minutes to discuss this. Is it because of the long conversation you expected about this, or why were we shoved later on the agenda?
Harry, that's not a question for Dan. That's a question for the board. I'll let the chair address it if he wants, but we as a board agreed to do that. I'll let the chair go beyond that if he wants.
Harry, we had members of the audience in person sitting in chairs, so we figured they could go home. It might be easier to be on Zoom waiting than sitting in chairs here.
Okay, I didn't see that. Okay. I just, I do think these are very weighty questions. I'd like the other committee members to speak, but I don't think we can decide these questions tonight without the chair of the committee here and without the committee speaking amongst themselves. We haven't because we don't want to violate the Brown Act, but this is the first we're hearing of this, and it's a lot to consider. So I'll put myself on mute and hear from the other committee members.
I mean, Harry, I understand what you're saying, but our board of directors has discussed it and brought it up. It was discussion with dozens of Oak Park residents when we were talking about district committees and wanting to talk about the question, and staff has said they have done outreach about this item. And it is a public meeting. We can't delay because just because a chair of an advisory committee wasn't able to attend this meeting. I understand that's frustrating, and I would hope with him being informed ahead of time, he could have written us a letter, he could have talked to staff. I would be interested, staff, if you've heard from Mr. Cooper, if he has opinions or thoughts, I'd be interested in hearing those before we come to any decision.
He also has my phone number.
I'd like other committee members to speak to whether or not they understood what this was exactly about. I thought this was just basically saying we're going to keep the committee as is.
Zach, could you speak to that?
Yeah, Chair Gray, thank you.
I'm sorry, speak to my question.
I did have a conversation with Dan Cooper earlier in the week regarding this item. I did not know the nature of the conversation or necessarily the board was going to have, what topics they were going to discuss other than what was on the staff report, and I informed Dan of that exact kind of information. Dan made me aware that he was open to hearing kind of where the board was going, didn't know what the sense of the board was, but he was going to, I heard from him that he was going to listen in or react to whatever the conversation was tonight. So he was aware the meeting was tonight and certainly had prior knowledge of this conversation before tonight's meeting.
May I just say 3 things that it's in a form of question, which is, I've never heard, unless anyone else has heard this, that the committee is not functioning as well as it should.
I've told you that personally. I've said
told that to him?
I've said specifically when someone, then Dan Cooper said, oh, I think it's an item of miscommunication. I said, no, it's not. We communicated, it was committee members. So the committee is not functioning when there's not communication, and I don't believe that's from our staff's perspective or our board members not communicating.
Okay, I never heard what Dan Perinack said, which is the committee is suffering from mission creep. First time I'm hearing that tonight, that we're going way beyond the scope of the original intention of the committee. I disagree with that. And number 3, I never heard that this was an issue that where if you have an Oak Park committee, you would suddenly have to have committees for all the other districts. Doesn't make sense to me because Simi Valley is a city, Oak Park is not, and that's...
Harry, there's unincorporated communities in Simi Valley.
Yeah, but then what you're saying is that this would have to be like an Oak Park / Wood Ranch
No,
committee, and
we're
all
saying
this is new to us.
why would the Knolls not get a committee? Like, why would our staff give more attention not to the Knolls? That's, I think, the comment.
All I'm saying is that this whole conversation is new to me. Zach can further explain, but I don't think Zach was aware how deep this conversation was going to go. Brian, you said in the agenda listing that you were in favor of just leaving it alone. And that's where I thought it was just a pro forma.
No, I didn't put anything in there that I'm interested in leaving it alone.
want to understand.
I'll just do this
What's that
in
you're
form of
doing?
a question. Where is anybody seeing anything that indicates that the purpose of putting this on our agenda was to just automatically leave things alone? I don't know. This isn't I didn't ask this item to be put on the agenda, but I have to say, in fairness to Director Dennert, I don't see how anything about this can be interpreted as we're just doing this to leave things alone.
I'm all in favor of a conversation tonight. I'm just saying, I think that I'm taken aback. I don't know if my other fellow committee members are taken aback. I didn't know this was an existential conversation about the future of the Oak Park Committee. I'm curious to know if others on the call are aware.
Harry, I would say that after public comment, you might know more about my suggestions, but because I'm supposed to leave it to questions, I haven't been able to address those. So maybe after public comment, I could tell you why I put it on there in more detail, but I would say to all the committee members, if there's any suggestions for improvements, I'm listening to that so I can write them down and put them into my ideas. If you think the committee is perfect the way it is, I understand. But if you have literally a single suggestion how to make the committee better, let me know and I could consider that.
Harry, do you have any more public comment?
None.
Yes,
Okay, we'll move on to, I'll let the chair handle the comment. No?
Yeah. Brian Mattson, you unmuted. Did you want to make public comment on this item?
yeah, hi, thanks. I was aware that this was on the agenda tonight, and I was under the impression that because of the districting that's going to be happening with the Parks District, that the committee was probably the potential for it to be eliminated. And I understand completely with the plans for the redistricting to the 5 districts, there may be no need for this committee, and I appreciated that it was on the agenda tonight for a discussion. So I had reviewed the packet earlier, and I had discussion with one other committee member about this, and you're doing exactly what I thought you were going to do. I don't disagree with the thought of discussion about the committee. I think it's fine. I think that I think there's a lot of things that have happened recently that the committee may not be effective at this point in time. And I think the decisions that the board has made, especially around pickleball and things like that, were appropriate. And I think there's a lot of things that reviewing the budget and obviously getting input from us in the Oak Park community about the budget and what our fellow residents are looking for, I think is great, and I appreciate being able to contribute to that. But some of the other issues I think that we've been asked for input on, I think have gone afield, and I'd like to see us back to focusing on what's happening in Oak Park specifically. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item?
I'll just chime in that I'm here to be all ears. The transition to elections by district creates an avenue for representation that was unavailable when the committee was set up. But it might mean, depending on how the district representatives were going to work their districts, that there are either more or less opportunities for civic input from the residents of Oak Park. As someone who's worked in the MAC for a couple of years, I think it's really important for people to have a venue to it where they can speak to public officials directly and provide input and review. And if we do that with other portions of the greater district, as long as we have an opportunity for citizens to have that representative input, I think that would be great. And I hope that this is the start of a dialogue about where we go as we transition to district management and district representation. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Not seeing anybody unmute, but Danny Sue, Eric Tesher, any public comment?
Chair, I know you're calling on them, but Eric and Danny, I value your opinion on any suggestions on how to make the committee more effective for the Oak Park community. If you have any suggestions for that.
Yeah, I do.
No.
I have a few too.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Freeman?
Chair, I think you're asking, Brian was asking Danny, Sue, and the public for suggestions, but Kate and Elaine are suggesting they're ready to comment when you're ready.
Okay, I will say Danny, Sue is muted now. Would you like to make a public comment on this item?
Okay, I just, as far as the committee goes, you guys meet every 2 weeks and make decisions every 2 weeks, while the committee meets once every 3 months. And meeting every 3 months, unless we're totally, or unless the committee is totally involved in the board meetings, there's going to be a little bit of difference there between what we hear. As Harry mentioned, he had no idea that this was going on. I kind of knew because I keep track of these meetings, these board meetings, and I know that it was mentioned in the last board meeting. But like I said, as far as it doesn't work if if the committee, and it's not we because I'm not on the committee, but if the committee is governed by the Brown Act and we can't get together and discuss things, and we're only meeting, like I said, once every 3 months, and the board's making decisions every 2 weeks, it just doesn't work. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Just because, thank you for speaking, Danny. Just for a last opportunity, Eric, did you want to make last opportunity to make a public comment on this item? Okay. I'm going to say we're at board comment now, and I do want to make sure all of my colleagues get a chance to speak, but I do, since people on Oak Park have mentioned it. I do want to mention it's for everybody in Oak Park who's talked about outreach engagement, just like everybody in the district currently does, with or without an Oak Park Advisory Committee. I do want to promote, I should only speak for myself, but I believe there's been strong consensus from the board on this, that Oak Park residents would continue to get outreach from Rancho Simi on staff and their elected representatives at a minimum on issues of their interest. We have meetings on Zoom, and we do our best, staff does their best to notify anybody who's expressed interest on select issues. So this is a public meeting, and we always try and encourage an outreach to groups and to individuals who have spoke at previous meetings on a select issue, and do outreach to make sure they know whenever we're going to speak on a new issue that they may want to speak on too. I don't believe that would change going forward, regardless of whatever the advisory committee may or may not look like. But I'll kind of end that comment there. Would any board members?
Chair, normally I try to not cut people off, and when I do, I feel bad. But because I put this item on the agenda, can I now speak and let everybody know my basic thoughts, and then we'll expand the conversation, because I definitely want feedback from other board members.
Yeah, and I mean, that's basically how I started.
Okay, so I definitely didn't put it on the agenda not to change things. I definitely put it on there to change things, but I didn't know what I was going to change because I didn't know what other board members thought. Because I didn't want to propose things and nobody else likes the idea, that's fine, that's how it works. But I'm going to point out it's not an election, and I can't go along with that part. We can't continue that. It's a nomination, but 10 or 11 votes, maybe. Are you a registered voter? We can't check voter registration. We're not equipped to do that. You can't check voter ID in California. Maybe we should, maybe we should not, but that's not for a park district to check voter ID. You don't need a driver's license. Children should, in my opinion, if it's an advisory committee, are we saying that kids' advice is not important? So yes, I would say, if why can't they vote? It's not in there. And I'm going to guess that we kind of took it over slowly, the nomination process, and we didn't realize what was happening with it. But at this point, in January, we shouldn't be checking voter ID, or if someone's a registered voter. You could vote in this election. That's why I'm saying it's not an election. You don't even have you don't have to be a registered voter or a citizen. So if we take no action tonight, then in January we're going to run a thing. I won't call it an election, or we're not checking voter ID because we can't. We don't know if they're citizens. We don't know if they're registered voters, and children should be able to vote. The other reason that I brought this up is I sense that the goal, or the role of the committee is to give us advice, and primarily we formed it on projects in the budget, and then on other ideas like recreation programs. And then obviously if policies are different to Oak Park and Seam Valley, then we should get feedback. But if you could win with 10 or 11 votes, I'm going to tell you, if you take no action tonight, board members, the committee is only going to be either against pickleball or for pickleball next month. So in January, because I'm pretty confident our pickleball friends and the people against it, they could easily get 30 people to go sign a piece of paper or whatnot. And then instead of a Oak Park Advisory Committee give us on projects, the budget, and everything, it's going to be just Deer Hill Park. That's the only purpose of this committee. So I would like to take action tonight so that we have board members, or advisory committee members that give us advice as intended. Last year, the biggest issue in Oak Park specifically was pickleball, and we have an advisory committee that didn't want to give us advice on it. Now they did say we would like you to handle it, which is good, and I like that, that's advice. But then when we handled it, they were surprised that some of them that was on the agenda. After the committee requested it to be on our agenda, they said, well, we didn't know it was on your agenda. You requested it to be on our agenda. We put it in the newspaper, we emailed many people, we reached out to many people, we posted on social media, I personally called people, and we posted it on, we emailed people, and our own advisory committee said, one member of it, they didn't know that's what was going on. So it's hard to get advice when people aren't as involved. After that, they said we should go back on our decision, 3 of them, but 3 of them said they should not, and they're happy with the decision. Then our advisory committee formed a subcommittee, but then decided that wasn't a smart idea. For 5 years, I've been asking for a joint use agreement with the school district, and I would like our committee members to work on that with us, to reach out to their friends and neighbors to say, hey, it would be beneficial to the park district and the school district to have a joint use agreement. Not a dictated joint use agreement that's good for one side or another, but just work on it. I understand they're going to have another superintendent. I mean, how many years is it going to go that the people of Oak Park are paying to use parks, but we're also, we're paying, and we're sending bills back and forth for very small amounts. Now, if we had an advisory committee that was reaching out to their neighbors, they would have been talking to the school board about the importance of it. I would like to appoint members to the advisory committee, so this is the part where, in my mind, we're modifying, but we're not eliminating it. By appointing it, we can have an easy application you fill out online, and then at a future board meeting, we could appoint people. Elaine, you mentioned to me that before there was an opening on the advisory committee, and it was middle of the year, so we did that, and we had many people. I think you said 5 people, maybe?
5 or 6 people.
So I think if we do appointments, we'll get a cross section of the community that feels like, you know, filling out an application is different and easier in my mind than running for an election where you gotta get your friends to go to the community center. On that application, I don't intend to ask them, do you agree with my opinion? Because that's not the voice of the advisory committee. I would ask that they commit to attend meetings, commit to read agendas, and commit to do outreach to their friends and neighbors about issues with the park district. So that the community doesn't say we didn't know. Well, of course, your advisory committee would let you know. They would reach out before the meeting, not after. I think that would be more transparent. Then a couple of things I'd like to see us talk about modifying is we have a MAC member and a school board member, and I think those are good and valuable, but I think they should be ex officio, and by that I mean they're automatically on the committee, but their role is to give a report at the beginning of the meeting on MAC business and school board business that impacts the park district that we should all be made aware of. I think there should be fewer staff members that need to attend the meeting, but that doesn't mean we're not hearing feedback. And the reason is that time is money. And there's other communities in Seam Valley that would also say, well, it'd be really nice if we had all that attention for our neighborhood. But all these things would be after new board members. So we have some of board members that are, I'll say appointed, because I'm not saying they're elected with that system. If they're halfway through their term, I'm not saying they need to apply. So there's, I believe, Dan, is it 3 of them that are halfway through their term?
Correct.
So my suggestion is we'd automatically appoint them. They don't need to apply because they've already had the right to serve their 2-year term. And then we have 2 seats that are coming up in January, but it's not for the January meeting. So I would suggest that tonight we make the decision to say we're going to appoint, and then we have up until April to finish that process and outreach and let people apply for that. Because their first meeting of their new advisory committee members would be in April. So tonight we don't have to change around the committee completely because some of the people said, Harry said he didn't know about this or what we're talking about. So we could bring it to the meeting in January and talk about it and get feedback. And then our board could say, all right, with their feedback, we can see how to modify the committee. But that said, I still think we should take action on the nomination process to appoint. A couple other things I think, and this has been from my experience as a liaison to the committee, placing items on their agenda. I would like to reform that. And the reason for that is sometimes there's items on the agenda that are good issues, but they distract them from the larger issues that we need their help on. So I'm asking for people's advice on the budget and capital projects. And we're spending time talking about the color of our water filtration box or spending time on bike bells. Now that doesn't mean those issues aren't important, but if we were going to modify the bike bell policy, we'd modify it for the whole park district, which means that conversation would be here. And if it's not that those items are unimportant, but they're taking up all the time in the committee, by the time they get to the bigger items, they say, well, let's just do that next time. And as Danny Sue mentioned, they don't meet that often. So when they spend time on the smaller issues, they're not focusing on the main idea. If we eliminate the committee, my suggestion would be to not do that for this year because we have 3 board members or advisory committee members halfway through the term. But we could bring that up after the next election with new board members on our board, possibly, to see what their feedback is. So I would say that we keep the committee but modify it for the year. And then the next year, about this time, we could discuss if there's any other modifications. But I would point out, if they did not have a committee, but they had a board member from their community, then they wouldn't be subject to the Brown Act because you could get together with your neighbors and talk about stuff and lobby a public official. So that actually might address Danny Sue's concern. It might make it easier, but I don't suggest we address that this year. And then I want to thank Jim and Brian for their feedback, because their feedback was, yes, it sounds to me that they understand the committee should change, and there's always room for improvement. So narrow down, I'm going to ask that tonight we definitely discuss appointing members, and that we do that so that it's not a narrow interest, but it's advisory committee members, that we make it an easy application. We have they commit to those things I mentioned. We keep the current board members, they're halfway through their term. And then lastly, I apologize, for placing items on their agenda, my suggestion would be the district manager can place items on their agenda, and we can, because we're asking them for advice. And then their committee chair can. So that means if you're on the committee and you want to add an item to the agenda, it's not automatically on the agenda because they've got a full agenda. Maybe they should run it by Dan, one of us, or their committee chair to put it on the agenda. And that way it's not to discourage those conversations, but focus them on their main thing. So being that the meeting's in April, I think I made myself clear on the nomination process to be appointed, but the other parts of how to modify the committee, we could wait until we get their feedback in January.
Do we just want to go around the horn, Chair Gray?
Yeah, let's do that. Director Arbor, would you like to do
So I agree with a lot of the specific comments that Director Dennert made. I just have a completely different take on this, and it's one of common sense. The first thing I'll say is as far as this next term, I mean, election versus appointment, a somewhat fake election versus appointment, I think they're equally bad. I've never been a big fan of appointments, but I'm also not a big fan of elections that aren't really elections. So to me, they're equally bad options. But what I want to talk about more, and it's not a decision we need to make tonight, and it's probably not a decision we even should make tonight, but it does go to the original question that Director O'Brien asked to begin with, and that is one with when we're going to districting, the need for a committee and what that says about whether other communities of interest will need a committee. And it's not just the Knolls because they're unincorporated, but it's a lot of those other communities of interest that I mentioned as well, because what we've had now in going through the districting process is, some members of some communities of interest may be happier or unhappier with the outcome of the districting process. And it does raise a real concern if other communities of interest wanted to have committees as well. So that is something we need to consider. I believe it was Chair Gray mentioned something that's really crucial to all this too. Our meetings are on Zoom now. They're available to the public, to the entire district on Zoom, which has made them a lot more transparent and a lot more accessible. And there's no example for me that is better than the discussion about districting. There was never any separate recommendations made by the Oak Park Committee, but I saw some, certainly not all. I heard from some current Oak Park Committee members during the districting process. I heard from some past Oak Park Committee members, and I heard from a lot of people from Oak Park who I didn't even know who they were. And it was probably the most effective representation of the views of Oak Park that I've seen on any issue in my 7 years on the board. And so for me, and I think it was Danny Sue that mentioned it, the committee meets every 3 months, our board meets every 2 weeks, and it does lead to unwieldy results sometimes. We had meeting after meeting on districting as part of our regular meetings that were well attended by various members of the Oak Park community, and that was effectively communicated to the board. As I say, that's the most effective communication from the Oak Park community as a whole that I've seen in my 7 years on the board. And that speaks to the fact that sometimes the committee process even bogs down what we're trying to accomplish. And now with districting essentially being in effect, we'll have our elected members from the various districts in effect next December, 1 year from now. There is a direct representative, a direct elected representative that anyone from Oak Park can go to. But even apart from that, I think pretty much everyone on the current board, and I think anyone that would be an effective elected board member would indicate is we're all available to hear from any resident in the district. They don't have to just be part of the district that we're going to represent, but the entire Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. So I disagree that we should wait for this discussion until after the next election. For me, it's not a discussion we need to complete tonight, but it's something we need to decide well in advance of the next election, so that once that election is completed and we are in districts, we've made a decision on whether we're going to continue with the Oak Park Committee or not. Because again, if we have to consider that it could open the door for other committees from other communities. And one of the comments that I really respect that Director Denner made, but I think he was a little bit too generous in his representation, is, we don't need to have as many staff members attending the meetings. Well, that's an understatement, but he was generous in his comments because it doesn't take into account the preparation time in terms of reports and having everything set up for the meetings that our staff does. And that's a drain on time, and it's a drain on resources. And there's been, I've loved all of the Oak Park Committee members that I've worked with, and there's been good reason to have that committee because of Oak Park's unique place in the community, and both a perceived and realistic perception by the Oak Park community and Oak Park Committee members that they don't have representation. But now they're going to have a directly elected member that represents their district, and it does change the equation. But really what also changes the equation for me is the input and the effective input that we receive during the districting process from many members in the Oak Park community. So again, this isn't a decision that we need to make tonight, But I do believe it's a decision that we need to take up well in advance of the next election, and certainly in advance of the completion of that election, because the right time to consider that decision is before the next board takes effect, because that will then be a board where a majority of the board is represented by districts. So I do feel that's important. And even hearing comments from the various members tonight, I mean, it's a mixed sentiment as to whether the committee actually continues to be effective. I forget who the gentleman was who alluded to that. I believe Danny Sue alluded to that. And so I think at this point we have to decide, number one, is it even best for the district to go on with the committee a year from now? And number two, is it even in the best interest of the members of the Oak Park community to go on with the committee a year from now? That is the question that I think we need to take a closer look at going forward. As far as the next year is concerned, I do agree there need to be some reforms with the committee. There are some things that have gone far afield. The election versus appointment thing, I think both sides of that don't lead to a great result. But that's kind of where I see this. I think it's a much more. I think the equation has changed in terms of the fact that we've gone to districting, and just based on the effectiveness that I saw directly from the Oak Park community that was aware of all our districting meetings, because boy, they showed up in numbers, some in person, but mostly on Zoom. And that's the most effective representation that I've seen from Oak Park on any issue over the course of the past 7 years.
Vice Chair Freeman, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. Well, first I'm going to thank Director Denner for bringing this forward, because I think it's something that really needs to be addressed. And I think that, as I started earlier out of line, maybe we as a board haven't been clear to the committee either. And I think we ought to outline, as Director Dennard said, a report from the MAC, a report from the school district, because there are representatives there, requiring the committee to review and see what's going on in the district. I mean, and as was stated, it's on Zoom. We're very visible. They can easily get to our information to see if there's anything that affects them and they want to address individually or as a committee. I also think they need to, or we should request that they review the capital projects and the budget. From past experience when I was on the committee, it was clear that it took a lot of time and for the members to understand the budget. And I think that's something we managed to do, or that the general manager managed to do. But I think that's a critical part. And I also like the committee structure to let us know if there's an issue that's come up that we don't know about, like, for instance, the tree that was in the sidewalk that we spent, or the tree at our playground. I mean, those are just two examples that came from the committee that we spent a lot of time on. So I think, in all fairness, we should, at the January meeting, have this discussion with the committee, that what we expect of them, and how we're concerned that we may not have been as clear as we would like for their input, and that we're considering going to either an appointment rather than election, or no committee at all because of our redistricting. But I don't want to take any action until we present all this information to the committee in January, so they understand why we're having this conversation. And
Elena, I understand the wisdom in what you're saying for most of it, but there's only one time sensitive part. The election to the committee is in January, so if we bring it to the committee in January, it's too late to change it because we won't have a board meeting
I
before
think,
that.
I will go along with Director Avila that we carry on as we have been, look at it again the next year after the election by district.
That's not exactly what I said, though.
Okay.
What I said is that I'm ambivalent because I don't like either alternative in terms of election versus appointment. What I said, and I'll address this later when we're having motions, but what I said is that I do think before the next election, we do need to address, for the good of the community of Oak Park as well as the good of the entire district, whether the committee should remain a committee that we put our resources into once the next board members are sworn next December. So I haven't spoken, I haven't taken a stance one way or the other on the election versus appointment.
I apologize. I think that the committee should continue to function. The question is how it functions in my mind. And is it functioning the way it should? And are we giving, does the committee have clear direction on what their job is and how they're supposed to report to us as a board? And so at that January meeting, my recommendation is we either tell them in January that we'll appoint, go out and ask for people to apply, or we tell them we'll go for the election. Either one is fine with me. But more importantly is what the whole point of the committee is to report to us and for them to be aware of everything that's going on in the district, and they can do that. And it's also their responsibility, if there is an issue, to let their community know. I mean, that's one of their jobs is to, it's like neighborhood council puts out flyers if there's an issue, so that the people within the council know that there's an issue and they need input. And that's what the committee should be doing, I think. And I think they need to know that in January, and maybe they won't want to do that. Maybe that's not,
I agree with you, because if a committee member doesn't know what we're doing, even if it's on the agenda, how would their community know?
Yeah.
I would like them to be telling their community.
I mean, whether it's they ask one member or two members to always be listening in at our board meetings. I mean, maybe they assign a committee member to be on the Zoom to report back.
Well, that's one of the reasons I think as a part of that appointment process, we're not asking, do you agree with us, because that's not my goal, but we say, do you commit to do these things? Because I asked for that last year from our committee, and some of the members said maybe. And then it sometimes happened and sometimes not. And then the exact same issue happened where we didn't know. Well, you could have known if you would have followed my request from last year.
But they need to know that that's their job. That's what they're there for. And if they're not comfortable with that, then they shouldn't be there, or we reform the committee.
I just want to indicate one thing. I just want to go back to the one example. We didn't get any recommendation from the Oak Park Committee on where the Oak Park community stood on districting, and they had no problem being aware of when our meetings on districting were taking place. They had no problem, whether it was in person or for the most part on Zoom, being present at those meetings, and they sure did one hell of a job of communicating what their views were on what district Oak Park should be part of. So the notion that because the committee doesn't know, the community doesn't know, I don't necessarily agree with that. It may be true in some instances, but it's not necessarily true in all instances. And again, you could say that about any part of the district. You could say that about issues that come up in Simi Valley as well. But again, the contrary took place in terms of the districting process because they came out in numbers and they were effective.
And because I agree with you, I'm going to modify what I was saying. And I would say the community did know, but if the committee doesn't know, well, I thought the purpose of the committee would be to get input from the community. So I agree with you. We had a lot of feedback, and that shows us different ways to get feedback.
And I'll give the Acorn probably the congratulations on that one, because they had the information in there, and that's where people were getting the information, where it should technically first come from the committee.
Ed, you pointed out that you would like to discuss maybe in the following year the long-term committee. Elaine, you mentioned you wanted feedback from the committee before we do that.
Yeah.
But I'd like to point out, they're normally, I like Ed's phrase, fake election, but that process, it's 2 years, correct?
Correct, they're 2-year terms.
So I would like for the appointments for them to be 1 year, but if the committee exists in the future, I'm fine with reappointing people after a year so they get experience. But I'd point out it'd be really difficult if we have a process in January, they get appointed to 2 years to a committee, and then later some board members say, well, we want to change the committee. Well, he's got appointed to 2 years. So, or they were selected to 2 years, I should say. So I think it's a good time now to say, hey, we might address this in the future, but for now, there's not an election in January. There'll be a different process.
If we do that, I think we ought to be clear on what their job is.
Yes, before they apply, like what their commitments are.
Exactly.
Well, whether it's an appointment or an election, I think it should be made clear to them that the issue of whether the committee is going to exist past next December should at least be, they should be made aware of that possibility.
If I can ask.
Would you like to make any comment?
Yes, I would. I have a few comments. Yeah, I see that if we leave it the way I think if we leave the committee the way it is, we're going to create a lot more problems for ourselves. For one thing, every other neighborhood and every other district is going to want a committee very similar, and staff is already overworked. I don't want to make more work for them if we can avoid it. There's also, that could also get complex if every one of the 5 districts had a committee similar to the Oak Park Committee. Would they be competing with the neighborhood councils? And would it be superfluous? And would we have to bar someone from being on both committees because of conflict of interest? It could get dicey. I do think that what we should do is we should restructure the Oak Park Committee to be more like the neighborhood councils. Appoint the committee members. Maybe they meet once a month. Maybe they appoint people to zoom in on our meetings. Maybe do it that way. Structure it like the neighborhood council meetings. But if we do obviously need to talk to them about it. I think what we might do is present to the sitting Oak Park Committee that we want to move from elected to appointed, assuming we decide that for the membership. Maybe same number of members. School board and the MAC obviously continue to do what they've been doing. They should either appoint or elect, or however they appoint their representatives. I think they should keep doing that. Don't change that. Make it, as everyone else has said, make it very clear what we need from them and what their job is to do, is to keep, we keep them informed, they keep the citizens in their jurisdiction informed very much the way the neighborhood councils do here in Sini. And that, I think the appointing idea, I agree with Director Dinner that appointing as opposed to electing is a good idea, because we don't want it to be the pickleball committee, and it will be. And if not pickleball, it's not only pickleball. A few years from now, it could be something else that would be the new pickleball. And the idea if they're getting elected every couple of years, that cramming the.
If they have that feedback that they're against pickleball or for it or whatnot, that's fine. But
yeah.
I wouldn't want them to say, well, that's the only thing I signed up for.
Yeah, that's my concern as well. It's not the pickleball committee, it's the Oak Park Committee. So yeah, exactly. So that's kind of why I think strongly. I think it's time to restructure it so it's more like the neighborhood council. There's always the option of disbanding it, but I don't think anybody wants that necessarily. So those are my comments.
I'll just make a comment. I want it clear to the committee members in Oak Park that just because the district, the board would want to appoint, we're going to make it clear that we still value their opinions and we're not appointing because we want them to go along with whatever the board is doing. As a board appointee doesn't mean you have to just do whatever the board member wants. No, it's not that the district is trying to control the committee at all. I want that very clear. It's just a different way of structure.
We could actually end up with the exact same people on the board, on the committee.
Right.
Just appointed instead of elected.
Elaine, I like what you said about that. That's why I thought it should be a simple process, and I didn't intend for any questions to say which policies of the board do you agree with or disagree with, but just more, what's your involvement in the community? Do you commit to attend the meetings? Do you commit to read the agendas? Like, for example, for tonight's meeting, it's a one-page report, and it says Director Dennert requested the item. Right after that, it says discuss and provide direction to staff regarding composition, structure, and scope areas of responsibility. But nowhere in there does it say, and it says staff recommends alternative 1, which is to discuss. But nowhere in there did it say, I put this on there to not discuss.
I mean, I appreciate the time that the committee puts in, committee members, and I like having the committee there because if they're so removed from the district. I mean, it's a logistics thing.
Like the foster child and
bring
them into the community.
And so the key is how it's structured and what is expected of those members. As far as I'm concerned, that's the key.
I just want to point out that they weren't removed from the district during the districting discussion at all. They were front and center. And the second thing, I've said it before, and I'll say it again here. I'm all for people getting together and discussing issues that are important to them and letting their elected representatives know how they feel about those issues. What I'm concerned about here is once districts are in place, the possibility that the already huge drain on the staff in terms of operating the Oak Park Committee has the potential to become even bigger. And that's really where my concern is, especially when the community has shown they function every bit as effectively with or without the committee. And now they won't be separated, not only because we have the Zoom capability, but they won't be as separated from the district because they're going to have a one of 5 specific members that they have a hand in electing.
As a logistics thing, the Oak Park Committee is like the second week in January, second week of the month, right?
Yeah, I have some suggestions. I'm listening. I wanted to see if Chair Gray had a comment or where he wanted to take the discussion.
Yeah, I'll quickly add, I'm interested for January, changing it to appointments, and for any new folks, for it to be a one-year term, just to increase flexibility for whatever our board may decide, and for whatever input the current advisory committee has for us. And I would also, I understand the argumentation, we've gotten certain things from the committee, I completely agree. But I also think that's just being an active citizen and engaged in the park district. I think having an advisory committee and then us has also led to confusion during issues like pickleball and tennis and the bells on the trails for bikes, where people have been like, well, I already discussed this with these folks, why am I here, or what's the distinction? And then we're answering process questions when, we are elected and we went through a county election. And I think that is vastly different than, a hand count where, we don't have a district clerk who's formatted in the process of running election. I don't think we should be in the business of elections. I think we're perfectly capable of assessing a simple application of can this person provide us with advice and have a unique opinion to share with us. So I think in the long term, I'd be interested in what Oak Park has to say in January about what the possible, what the committee should look like in the future. But I do think reforms at a minimum would have to happen. And I do think for January, we should be doing an expedited process for appointing folks for a one-year term. Dan, did you have?
Yeah, just to clarify direction, I'm going to start with the long term. So I heard Director Dinner say having this discussion sometimes after the next election. I heard Director Avila make the point that it may be better to have the long-term solution or long-term the discussion regarding the long term of the committee sooner rather than later. Brian said a little bit later, so that's one. Number two, I think there is validity to Director Avila's comment. The issue, we're mixing issues here. The issue for the long term is that you're going to have a committee in one district and you're not going to have a committee in other districts. So in the short term, we're thinking we still want input from the committee, which is great, and they give us great input. But once you get that districts in place, you are going to have to answer the question, why does District 5 have a committee and the other districts don't? So we're kind of mixing the two notions. So what I want to say in the long term is I think we ought to decide a general time frame when we want to bring this discussion back, and the direction that I need from the board is whether you want to have a committee or not long term. And then the short term, we can lead into that. In the short term, taking it to the committee in January, we said we want to tell them it's kind of a little bit pointless if we're going to go to a point of not having a committee. But also, I need direction from you guys on what you want their work to be. So if I go in January, I've heard comments tonight, but I need you guys, like through the guidelines, to define, we want them to look at capital, we want them to look at this. So I need to rework the guidelines before I take it to the committee, because I don't have direction for you specifically what you may want them to do if in fact we still have a committee. So those are some of the things on my mind. So what I would suggest we do, from what I'm hearing, is in the short term, I would either move to appointment of the members in January, and then after we do that, we can appoint the two, and then you guys give me direction on when you want me to bring back an item to have that larger discussion relative to the long-term future of the committee, how it's structured and what it looks like, and we can do that anytime after January that you would like.
I'm going to make your job easier on the long term. As is my right as a board member, pursuant to the policy manual, I am going to ask that we address the issue in the first half of next year, so that it's been addressed one way or the other prior to any filings for the election. So I would say anytime during the first half of the year, no later than June, so that we address the issue. Doesn't indicate what the outcome of the issue is going to be, but I think it needs to be addressed. So I'll ask that be placed on the agenda the first half of next year, so that solves the long term.
Then my other question is, the threshold question is, are we going to have a committee for the long term or not? If the answer is we're going to have it, then we need to have a discussion about what their role is. But it's not really worth spending time on what their role is until we just have that discussion about deciding, do we want to have a committee or not? And then the question is it worth having a conversation with the committee? It's going to be hard for me to do that without direction from you guys. If you decide to have a committee without hearing from you what you want that committee to do, or what you want their charge to do.
I guess I could get it. I'd like to give them direction in January, what we expect from them. Very simple.
But I need that direction tonight.
Well, I
because
know
I don't know.
that's where I'm going.
Okay.
That they review the budget, which they'll have to do later in the mid-year. That they report back to us on any issue regularly that comes up, if there's a maintenance or something that needs to be done. I had another one here.
Projects?
Well, that the agenda be structured so that the school board member and the MAC member are on the agenda to give them a report. And then in that way, we get a report as well about what's going on at those two agencies. And hopefully, I think based on Director maybe we can get the committee or the community to put pressure on the school board or school district, you know, to work and get things done together. I mean, maybe there's a way to utilize the community more. And I just think they need to be reminded of what their job is.
So,
And I'm not prepared to I'm not prepared at this time to say, I'll do away with the committee. I'm not prepared to do that.
Here's what I recommend. Per your suggestion, we appoint 2 members in January. Then, and we let them know, you know, they already know that we're kind of doing this. So, and then we arrange to have a meeting with them. Here's the way we're looking at the way the new committee is going to be. And then get some input from them on if they can do that, if they can comply with that, or if they have some other ideas how they want to do it. And then over a few meetings with them, it should become clear whether or not we need to have that committee, or whether it needs to be different than it is now, or whether we need to have it. Does that make sense?
a little bit.
Yeah, I just have one question. Dan, this is a question for you as the district manager on behalf of your staff. Is it going to be an added drain on you and your staff to present new guidelines, knowing that we haven't had an up or down vote yet on whether the committee is even going to remain next December, or is that not a big deal for you? Because I honestly don't know the answer to that.
That is a big deal because I need the board to give me what you want to redraft the guidelines. So we have guidelines attached. This is the direction that the staff tries to follow relative to the committee. So what would be optimal is, like Director Abel is saying, if we bring back the scope and role of the committee later in the year, so that I can get direction from you guys to redraft the guidelines, and then I can put you in front of those. And then when we go to the committee, I can tell them very clearly what the board's expectation is. Without that, with just kind of sitting here talking about it and trying to scope out what we want the role to be, again, this is if you still want the committee. I got to redraft these guidelines because these guidelines are completely different than what we're talking about here. So I need some direction on how to redraft these.
Would it make more sense for you to have a meeting where we make a decision on whether the committee remains in place after next December, and then a separate, if the decision is to keep it in place, then have a separate meeting on the guidelines? Or would it make sense to have that on both of those items on the agenda at the same time?
We could do that at the same time. That is the threshold decision, though. Do you want a committee or do you not after December or at any point leading into the next election? If the answer is a majority of the board wants a committee, then I would say we spend the time to redraft the guidelines and give them what the rules are. If the decision is not to have a committee, then we don't need guidelines, and it's probably not worth the time to go through that exercise.
So what we're saying is we appoint if this next year. We take it to the committee in January. We tell them our concerns, and we appoint for the next term, next year. And then next December, the board decides whether to have the committee or not.
I would say earlier
And
than...
at that time, if they decide to have the committee, then they'll spell out their responsibilities.
No, I've already indicated that it should be on the agenda. No, the sooner the better, but no later than June. The decision as to whether the committee continues is a decision that needs to be made before the process of the next election begins, because the next election will be in effect next December. So it's a decision that needs to be made well ahead of that. That's why I have asked that the item be put on the agenda. The sooner the better, but no later than June of next year.
So I would suggest this. So tonight's action would be to appoint members in January to fill out the 2 members that are out. The other 3 members will continue in their current positions. Sometime before the committee's next meeting in April, I would suggest we have a meeting to decide the longer term look. At that meeting, you can say this is a draft, or if you decide to have a committee, and then if you guys want input from the committee, I can take it to them at their April meeting, if you guys want to do that. Relative to the report I bring before April, we can set it up in two ways. I can redraft the guidelines, assuming that the committee continues based on the input tonight, or, and then so you'll have a draft of if the committee continues, or you guys could vote to eliminate the committee. That's option one. The other option is just to bring an item before April, before we draft any new guidelines, and have a discussion about the threshold question, if you want to continue with the committee or not, if that makes sense.
I do like that, I see the value in doing that in June or before. And I would suggest that maybe April or May, and the reason is then there'd be 2 meetings of the Park Advisory Committee, which they could provide feedback. So they'd be able to do that in January and in April, and then we could act on their feedback because we listen. And I would say also that allows them to understand the issues that are currently existing. And I'm open-minded with feedback from our community and conversations with the board members about the nature, the scope of the committee or its existence, and that discussion, but for later. But the reason I mention that is maybe the committee will focus on their task and convince people of the necessity of it, or maybe by giving them those 2 meetings to discuss it, they might just say, well, this could be done in other ways too. So if one of our board members is leaning one way or another, they could listen to them. But Dan, short term, if you were in January without drafting an entire report, I think this is, I think our board is agreeing on this, but I'll listen to you. We'd like them to focus on projects, budgets, and items of concern that are only specific to Oak Park. So if it's a park district policy, that goes to the board. But if it's a neighborhood issue in Oak Park, that would mean that their agenda items would be more limited to those things. Are we?
The challenge with that is that assumes the committee is going to continue as an appointed committee. And I don't think we've made that decision whether or not the committee is going to continue or not. So if we set an expectation that here's the role, here's your scope, and you're going to continue, I'm not hearing that we've made the decision to continue the committee or not. And again, that's relative to a new District 5 representative. So if we have that discussion with them and I go through, you know, you're going to have an appointed committee, we want your feedback and here's your role, only 2, 3, or 4 months later come back and say, oh, we've thought that in perspective of the new district elections, then there's going to be a phase where we do all that work and then come back pre-election and say, you know what, after thinking that through and talking about it, we're not going to have a committee anymore. So that's why I'm saying the threshold question in my mind is deciding whether you want to continue a committee or not, long-term relative to new districting, before you do all the work on setting up new guidelines and new direction.
Yeah, I don't think, excuse me.
You go first.
I just don't think we need to be that formal in setting up all new guidelines. I think we can tell them what we expect of them without going through and redrafting all the guidelines.
I understand that, but I'm hearing that there's some folks that want to revisit the committee and its role overall.
I think we should do that. But, I mean, I don't want you and staff to spend time redrafting, but, I mean, we should be able to, the committee chair, the representative should be able to say, here's what the board expects from you. We need your input on the capital improvement.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see you do a whole big.
If I can be candid here, I love going out to Oak Park. So I love meeting the people out there. It's great people. The people on the committee are great. But if without having a firm decision, this is really for the protection of Dan and his staff. You're putting a lot of extra work and a lot of extra burden and pressure on them to change things or even to make suggestions without knowing what the future of the committee is. And maybe the committee will stand, but in the meantime, you're really, there's already a drain on the work. And for me personally, I'm going to attend the committee meetings if I'm on the committee, whatever the guidelines are. But it's already a drain on the staff, and I have to say, there's a number of considerations here, but the staff is part of it, and And what we're doing now, instead of taking burden off the staff, is we're adding to the burden.
Now, let me clarify. I have no intention of staff being the messenger. I think it's the board representatives that would be the messenger of, well, what we expect from the committee. And it's up to the board members to explain that the full board, that our board is looking at options of continuing the committee, so they know that. But if I'm going to, if we're going to fill my appointment, and I know that the committee isn't going to last, why would I apply to be on the committee? I mean,
Well,
you know what I'm
that's
saying?
why I said previously, anybody who's new needs to be told that it may be only a one-year gig. The only other problem is if you put it on whoever the board members are who are representing the Oak Park Committee, you have to be really careful about that, because the board members are intended to be there to take in the information, not to impart, if it's truly an advisory committee, not to impart on the committee how they do their job. So if you don't have specific guidelines set out, you're kind of giving the board members a function that they really shouldn't have as part of that committee. And so we can do that, but then all of a sudden the board members are taking over the committee, which then defeats the whole purpose of having the
But
committee.
there could be an agenda item that says Park District Board report as an agenda item, and the board members could explain what was discussed here tonight.
I do think that our board members should participate in those meetings to a limited extent. So we're getting advice, but if they make a decision, as Danny Sue mentioned, they only meet sometimes 4 times a year, and they make that decision, and their decision is do this, and then we don't say anything, and like later we don't do it because it was outside the budget. You know, I feel like there is in shaping the conversation to make sure that they understand all the issues. Not saying vote one way or another, but hey, just make sure you understand if you do this, you can't continue with the other project priorities you might have. So I understand what you're saying, Ed, about reforming the scope of the committee and the staff having to do that and then maybe changing it again. So if Ed's going to say we're going to address it within by June or before, and that makes me think, hey, we need feedback, or I would like feedback from the Oak Park Advisory Committee and Oak Park community, then I would say that tonight I would just push to say we'll appoint members for the 1-year term and reappoint automatically the people that are currently in their 2-year term. And then we'll find out later what the feedback is and the thought. So I'll move that we'll have the process be to appoint the open seats to a 1-year term with staff coming up with a brief application. And then the other issues it sounds like we might address later.
Yeah, I would second that.
Can I also comment that I don't think all of staff should be there. I don't think Wayne and Zach and everybody should be there. I think general manager and 2 board members, I think that is adequate. And maybe the rec leader from the community center. But I just don't think it's necessary for everybody.
That kind of epitomizes the challenge with the committee, because if I'm just there and they're talking about arborists and trees and doing all that stuff, then there's not a point in having a meeting, because I don't have the expert there that can answer the question about trees and that kind of stuff. So and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that's part of the challenge with the effectiveness and the efficiency of the committee and their scope. Because if they're expecting to talk about trees and cutting trees or growing trees, I need to have the staff that knows. So that's part of the challenge. So that would lead you to believe, well, maybe that shouldn't be their scope, is getting into that level of detail. Because then if you're into that level of detail, then I need the experts in the room to answer their questions. So I did just say that as an example of that's kind of the challenge here, is we've got them down into that level of detail, and if we're going to give them that scope, we got to be there to.
If they raise an issue at their committee, they shouldn't expect an answer that night.
then they get it in 3 months. Yeah, that's kind of and the 3-month thing's challenging too, so.
What
So
is-
let me suggest this, the motion's the motion. Are you guys adverse to me bringing back an item, say the end of February, where I can frame this discussion in another report, more end of February before the committee's meeting in April?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Would that be the discussion on whether we're going forward with the committee? Absolutely. If you're comfortable doing it that soon, I have no problem with that.
But I don't necessarily, I can get feedback from the committee in January, which I'm sure they'll give me, but I would rather have direction from the board before I formally take that to the committee for their input.
Well,
And we can move that along in the February, beginning of April, before their next committee meeting.
The only other thing I'd caution here is in terms of getting direction from the committee, as far as whether the committee stays intact, there's more issues other than just what the committee members want. So the decision on whether to continue with the committee as of next December shouldn't just be a report on what the committee is suggesting. There's a lot of, I think, Dan, you're aware of them because we've discussed it, but there's a lot of issues that are part of that need to be addressed in that meeting before we make an informed decision one way or the other.
Right. That's what I'm saying too, is we need to have a discussion about that for the long term, yes.
One of the things we could possibly discuss is having them meet more often instead of quarterly, once a month.
So my understanding is the reason we have the quarterly meeting is because their scope was much less. They used to just comment on capital projects, so we didn't need to meet every month. If Wayne's processing, building Mayboyer Park or building the Oak Park Community Center, that was their scope. Therefore, you only needed to meet once every 3 months. If their scope broadens, then you get into challenges of, just like we're experiencing, talking about week-to-week things, and they only meet every 3 months. That all goes to the scope of what they do. The reason they only meet every 4 months, again, is because their scope was a lot narrower when the committee was envisioned, and that's why I'm saying we've crept away from what the original intent is, probably over the years, for good reason at the time. It's kind of creeped over, and now the 4 meetings a month don't make a sense if they're talking about getting down into kind of week to week and double, policy decisions. So that's another thing I'm just going to mention is you guys are a policy board. The committee should be making policy recommendations. The committee is down into administrative recommendations. So if you're appointing a policy board, they should be making policy recommendations. Based on what's going now, they're down into day-to-day administrative recommendations. That's another challenge of the committee. So, and they should be a policy advisory committee, not an administrative advisory committee. So, and again, I just throw that out there as one of the challenges with the current structure.
Yeah,
of the
and I see
committee.
that, and for people that don't understand, the reason that's unfair is if you're spending your time going through the brochure page by page with committee members, but you're not doing that for every community in St. Valley, that means that Oak Park is getting a benefit that people of St. Valley are not, but the people of St. Valley are paying for.
Correct.
So if they're focused on policies and projects, that's what I want. But I would like their scope to be focused on those things.
Yeah. So I'm going to just reiterate the motion, I think, and just from what I heard is we're going to appoint members for this year's, we're stuck with the time frame here. We're going to appoint the 2 members for another year. And then I'm going to bring an item that frames this discussion and all the elements related to it late February, April. You guys can give me direction then, and then you can decide how you want me to review that with the committee at maybe their April and June meetings or their April meeting.
Dan, although that is the motion, to clarify, I meant reappoint or automatically appoint the people that are in the middle of their 2-year term.
Is that what you want to, is that?
But the open seats, I would like to appoint. So
okay.
There's 2 open seats, we should appoint those.
Yeah.
And if you have to, just by rules, the 3 board members, advisory committee members that are halfway through their term, that we just automatically appoint them.
A little bit of semantics. The 3 that are already in the middle of their 2-year term, I don't know that you have to appoint them because they're already there.
Okay.
So I don't know that you need to take an action to appoint them. They've been elected for 2 years. They'll continue in their elected 2-year term, which there's 1 year left, and then you'd appoint the 2 new members, but not appoint the 3 elected members. They would just carry out their term.
But the policy would be going forward unless we change it, that all positions are.
Correct.
Well, so that's what I wanted to clarify. Are we is this something that we're saying this is the way it's going to be going forward if the committee continues? Because that affects my vote. If this is a one-time thing, then I'll vote for it. If it's a permanent thing, if the committee stays intact, I'm going to abstain because I don't like appointments. But on the other hand, having heard Director Dennert's explanation of how this election takes place, I don't like that either. So if this is a permanent thing, I'm abstaining because I think both methods are bad. If this is just a one-time thing that we're doing until we decide what we're going to do at the committee, then I would vote for it. So I need to know that.
I would,
Think of it as a one.
and I'm going to add on staff's perspective on this, I would like it to be a one-time thing because I need to bring back these guidelines in any event and get direction from you guys. So I would say that this motion is short-term, it's a one-time thing, because I still need direction from you guys. If you want to keep the committee, we have to redraft these whole guidelines. And there's different opinions here on how that's done. So, I hear from individually, each of you, your perspectives on that, but I need to bring back a document, a policy document that sets the tone. So I would appreciate not only for the policy perspective, but staff's perspective, so it's clear that we do this as a short-term measure and then we have the longer-term discussion when I can bring back another item and frame that better.
So the two people whose terms are up, couldn't they just be reappointed?
If they applied,
Yeah, we have to apply, right? But-
yeah.
Yeah.
But we could streamline the process for this time, because we don't even know if there's gonna be a committee a year from
Well, what
now.
I'm saying, not even open it up for appointment, just automatically reappoint them.
I don't know if they want to, and I know other members of the community would like to be on the committee.
But this, if we do that, that eliminates sort of that problem.
Yeah, but the two parts, we don't know if they want to, and there's people in the community that want to join the committee. So I would say we appoint those two, and we'll just see all the applications. And then Ed, you asked that question, I would say, we'll just say, what do you think about this? We just agree that it's a short-term solution, but we wouldn't necessarily revert or go in one direction, it would just be to be determined. So if we take no action, it doesn't go back to election, but it also at the same time, we'll figure that out later.
Right, as long as it's understood, we're going to determine that later. Not that this is not, if there is no other, this is not necessarily the way it's going to happen going forward. This is strictly meant as a one-time thing. If that's the motion, I just need to know if that is the motion.
Yeah, just next year when we discuss it, if we decide to keep the committee, I would still argue we appoint, but we'll figure that out after we decide if there's a committee or not.
I don't think we're going to next year, that we're talking a few months to bring it back.
I would say that then, when we bring it back,
Yeah.
that we wouldn't revert necessarily, but we haven't determined it. I agree, we haven't determined it. This action would not determine what we do in the future.
Okay.
So whose motion, is that, whoever made the motion, is that their motion?
Yeah, I made that motion.
Right, and I
So-
seconded that, I'm okay, I'm fine with that.
Any further discussion?
Josh, you are chair, and I respect that, and your choices on how to run a meeting, but I do see a hand up.
Harry, can you quickly frame what your comment is before giving it? Because we're about to make a vote on a motion.
I just want to thank you guys for not disbanding tonight. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Harry.
And to be clear, this motion also means that there's no election in January, right?
Yes.
That is correct. That is the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Harry. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Director Avila,
Aye.
Director Dennert,
Yes.
Director O'Brien,
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman,
Yes.
Chair Bryan.
Aye.
The motion carries with a unanimous vote.
Dan, I'm clarifying just the schedule. There is no election in January.
Yeah.
We need to appoint people, and they need to be in place for the April meeting.
Right.
So I'll leave it to staff to figure out the details of that part, but that means it doesn't need to be done in January, just before that April meeting.
Correct.
Okay. That is going to take us to item 9E, selection of the 2024 Chair and Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of the Rancho Senior Recreation and Park District.
Thank you, Chair. In keeping with the history of selecting the chair and vice chair, The board generally takes action each December to change, to select who the vice chair and chair will be for the year moving forward. The district's practice is it's been in a rotational schedule over, I think, forever, at least since 2008 in the chart. And so that if the board chooses to keep with its practice of rotating chair and vice chair, Director Abela would be up for the vice chair, and Director Freeman would be up for the chair position this year. That being said, the board also reserves the right not to keep with the rotation if you should so choose. The staff would recommend that the board select the chair and vice chair for 2024 this evening. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you. Any board questions? All right. Any public comment on this item? No. Hearing or seeing anybody, I'm assuming no one's approaching the podium?
No one is approaching the podium.
All right, then I will end public comment on that item. Board discussion, would anybody like to start us off?
I understand that we could make separate motions or motion together, is that correct? And can I say?
Probably do them separate. Vice chair, do a motion for vice chair, nomination and a motion, and a nomination and a motion for chair.
I will nominate Ed for vice chair of the board.
I'll second. Any other board discussion? Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Director Abela.
Aye.
Director Dennert.
Yes.
Director O'Brien.
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman.
Yes.
Chair Gray.
Aye.
That motion carries with unanimous vote.
Thank you. Any other discussion, any nominations for chair for 2024?
I move we elect Elaine Freeman to be chair for 2024.
And I will second that.
Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Director Abela.
Aye.
Director Dennert.
Yes.
Director O'Brien.
Yes.
Vice Chair Freeman.
Yes, thank you.
Chair Gray.
Aye.
Motion carries with unanimous vote.
Chair Gray,
Yes.
if I could just briefly comment.
Go ahead.
I just want to indicate that my votes were in keeping with the policy of rotating the positions, which I feel is important because we are not elected by the public to be chair or vice chair. We are elected to be directors. So the only fair way to conduct business is to do a rotation. And it in no way, my votes in no way reflect support for, or intend to reflect support for any other conduct or issues that may have occurred in the past, but that it is important to follow that policy.
Okay. Dan, question of point of order. It was selection of the 2024 chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
But we have voted for new chairs.
I think we're going to, we'll continue through the meeting if that's okay with the rest of the board.
Yes.
To finish this meeting, and then the new chair would effectively take office tomorrow, or be chair tomorrow, but at your next meeting, the new chair would take the seat, and the vice chair.
If my replacements are okay with that, I would.
I think they are, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, the next one is interesting then. Item 9F, extend the privilege of the floor to the outgoing board chair and the incoming board chair.
Yeah, Chair, if I could, before we get going on that, I would like to, on behalf of, I think, the staff, and the board can come as well, I've got your gavel here for serving as the chair, and you're now the outgoing chair. So here in the boardroom, we have your gavel with your name and recognizing you as chair for the past year. Just on behalf of the staff, I want to thank you for your leadership for the past year. A few of the things we've accomplished, I just wanted to mention for the record during your chairmanship and during your leadership. And there's several more, but these are some of the items. The election elections by district, obviously. You were the chair when that was implemented for the district, and that will probably last until state law changes, but you led us through that effort. At the suggestion of Director Avila and under your leadership, we changed our budget process this year to get much more community input, particularly on capital projects. So I thank you working with the staff on getting that scheduled and calendared and underway. The Arroyo Simi Greenway project got underway, and it's currently under construction during your chair. We expanded we got more open space, but we've expanded our discussions, working on getting even more open space. We've expanded outdoor programming, Josh. One of your goals was to do outdoor programming. We've expanded mobile rec. We've got a mobile rec program that goes out to community parks. And we've got probably 5 or 6 additional outdoor programming items that we've implemented this year as part of your priorities. We completed the fire projects, the Oak Park Lagoon, and had a groundbreaking for that, which was outstanding and very much appreciated by the Oak Park Committee. We've been successful this year at getting several grants to put to work for your district and the board's district. And we also expanded the ranger program and added a couple more rangers and a 3rd full-time ranger. So those aren't everything, but those are some of the things that we accomplished under your chairmanship, along with the support of your colleagues, and just wanted to acknowledge you for all the work you've done this year in leading this district and leading the board. And we'll present you your plaque when you get back to town, but thank you for your service, sir.
I'm very moved. A funny bit while you're going through, I was having to cross off parts of my brief remarks I was going to make. So they'll be briefer, but just a quick moment. I did want to say it's been a privilege and an absolute honor to be the chair. I've loved it. Even the tense or hard moments or meetings where the public was less than happy, I still loved every moment, and it's been something I will never forget. As Dan already highlighted, but I was going to say when I ran for office and when I came in as chair, I talked about the expansion of protected open space, which we've done. We've seen exceptional growth of the after-school club attendance and programs. We've seen continued expansion of programs and classes. We've seen outstanding events in 23. We had investments in the community pool, pickleball, golf courses, the equestrian center, teen center, a bunch of great things that are either ongoing or were announced. But I do want to highlight my excitement for the year ahead as well, even though I won't be chair. I'm excited and hopeful for some activity on the BMX track. I'm excited for the activity center ahead of us. I'm excited for lights and fields at Rancho Santa Susana expansion. I'm excited for more open space, as you mentioned, Dan. There's so many great things that have happened, but I definitely don't want to rest on the laurels that the Park District has been well earned. And I will thank staff in a moment more thoroughly. But I want to keep moving ahead, acknowledging there's been fantastic work. Obviously, as chair, my colleagues know I did not do it alone. I believe I'm the last one on I wouldn't obviously be the last one on the board to have been chair. But my first time doing it, it was incredibly exciting. I loved it. Dan, thank you for all your work. And the partnership, I deeply appreciated it. And I did want to extend one more time my thanks to the incredible staff, all the work that they put in 2023. None of it would have happened without all the sweat, blood, and tears that staff put in. I want to thank everybody, all my colleagues on the board, and the support of our community to make all of these things happen. It truly was a team effort, and I appreciated everybody's involvement in making 2023 my favorite year on the board so far. But I'm very excited for what lies ahead. So, thank you all.
Thank you, and now we'll, if the board has any comments about the outgoing chair, we can do that and then move on to extending the floor to the incoming chair.
I just want to give him a big shout out. He had quite a year. He got married, went on a long honeymoon, chaired this board, took a new job, and so I have to really congratulate him on the job that he did chairing this board, plus the success of the rest of his life. So, I've heard good things from people at your employ, by the way. Just last night, I heard some good things about you. So I really appreciate the role that you played this year and the towards the success of the district.
Thank you, Elaine.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say this. I was going to wait for board member comments, but if this is the appropriate time, I'll do this part now. In board member comments, I mean, Dan screwed it up for you, and he screwed it up for me too, because he covered a lot of what I was going to say. But the project priorities workshop, which I think meant a lot to me. It was my idea, and it was actually supported by the policy manual. But you really backed me on that, and it turned out to be a huge success, and I give you a lot of credit for that. It was a hit, I believe, with our staff, it was a hit with the public, and it was a hit with the interest groups. So that was really cool. Dan mentioned what a beautiful event, the reopening of the lagoon at Oak Canyon Community Park. I think I've got one that Dan didn't mention, and it's near and dear to my heart, but during your year we had the unveiling of the Space Force flag at the Veterans Plaza. And again, Dan mentioned the Arroyo Greenway. I believe I always get confused. These are the Phase 4 improvements that are partially completed and will soon be completed. That's happened on your watch. It's become a treasure of our park district, and it's used by many people: cyclists, walkers, runners, and the speeding up the process occurred because of citizen involvement, which makes that such an important event. And I want to conclude with the last one, because I really believe this one, there's a lot we could point to, but there's one that to me showed how much you grew as chair and became comfortable and effective in your role. And that was the way you presided over the district process. And one of the things that was unique, I think, to a lot of people who maybe know us is that I probably, surprisingly to a lot of people, thought districting was a good idea. I think for a lot of people, they were probably surprised to find out that Josh did not think it was such a good idea. And yet, you didn't let that stop you from handling it so effectively. And while probably nobody on this board, including me, would say that we got the ideal map, we got a really good map that hit on maybe not all, but most of our principles. And you guided us through that process, and it was a process that added citizen involvement, that had some unique things come up, but you were the guiding force through that, you were the calming force through that, and you played such a role in having that process completed effectively. And I have to say, the good news here is I'm a year closer to when I'm going to be chair. The bad news is I'm really going to miss you as being chair. Really impressed with the way you grew during the year. Thank you and congratulations, Josh.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, just echo what Director Freeman and Director Avila said. You did a good job. Your first year as chair is kind of tough because you're learning a lot. It's kind of, there's a lot of there go my people and I'm their leader kind of thing. So, but you did good, and yeah, congratulations on an eventful year.
Thank you.
Josh, before you were on the board, we used to sometimes go for a walk, and what I saw in you is a future where you could move on to a variety of leadership roles. And I wanted you to be able to build up skills while you're serving on the park board, and you've definitely done that in the last year. You did awesome with contentious and busy meetings, both with citizens participating online and in person, and that was during some busy times in your personal life. Because of that, I imagine that being a master of change could be very important to you. I'm going to point out, you said that the staff worked with us with blood, sweat, and tears, Just want to apologize to the staff, anyone that's ever cried over a board report. If that's on me, I apologize. But the sweat part, that's good for everybody. Josh, I also very much enjoyed that you said this has been your favorite year on the board so far. So I'm looking forward to you having even better years in the future. Lastly, I'm mostly looking forward to moving over one seat right here so this pillar's not right in front of me. Wayne said it's load bearing, whatever that means, but I guess the pillar's got to stay, but I get to move a few feet over to the right.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, I guess outgoing chair will extend the floor to the incoming chair to make some comments if you'd like.
I want to thank the board for agreeing to let me be chair this next year. I think it'll be a very active year, looking at all our capital improvement projects, plus issues we don't even know about, and maybe we'll have a final decision on the BMX track, which is an exciting thought. And so I look forward to working with all of you on the board and with staff, and I want to thank the staff. You're the greatest to me, and you make the meetings more pleasant, and you're out there to answer all the questions, and I really appreciate that. So I look forward to the year, and I'm sorry, actually, that Brian won't be here for the full year.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, good news.
I'll just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year, and may 2024 be really good for the district, for the staff, and for all of us. And that's it.
I know that Ed spoke about how we rotate chair and vice chair. And I'd like to say I'm happy with the two new people that are going to do it, both of you. I think you'll do good jobs. I'm not committed to always following the rotation, but I think there's value in it because that way we're not debating a post that's mostly ceremonial. So I think there's a good value in us getting along well and rotating. But if somebody only had an interest for one issue or one part, or there's some other reason, I'm not committed to it, but I've done it every time because I think it's a good thing to follow when possible.
Any other board comments on this item? Okay. That will take us to item 10, written communications of note.
Staff has none.
Any board members? All right. That'll take us to item 11, reports by board members. Director O'Brien, would you like to start us off?
I will start. Yes, hang on, I will start. I just have a few minor items. I had my ceramics class today, and the instructor was wondering if we could get more publicity when we were chatting. And said, I told her I'd find out, but I don't know if that's even possible. We have a lot of classes over at the senior center.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and probably do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. I'll tell her that. I understand there was some flooding over at the Birdie Bar yesterday.
Yeah, we had a mishap with a pipe in one of the restrooms, I believe, and it leaked out into the pro shop area and into the carpet. Nothing damage, but nothing hugely significant. They cleaned it up, dried it out, and may have to replace some carpet. But.
Okay, that's good. Okay, I also attended the Boys and Girls Club community breakfast with Jill, who was in the audience. Hi, Jill. That was good. The speaker was Eric Lamarck, and he was, I guess, a snow surfer and ended up surviving on snow in the wild all by himself for like a week. And he was actually quite inspiring and changed his outlook and lost his legs. So that was actually pretty inspiring. Wow. I had to leave a little early. I had another appointment, so I didn't get to hear the rest of the program, which I'm sorry about. I would like to have heard it, but oh well. And I also had the Strathern Park brainstorming meeting for the fundraiser for the new visitor center. given the construction costs, it doesn't sound like we're gonna have a new center anytime soon. We're probably gonna be upgrading the one we have, probably. That's all I've got, those things.
Incoming Chair Freeman, would you like to go next?
First, I'd like to thank Richard for standing in for me at Community Council when he just left. Thank you, Richard. Number two, I did attend the Boys and Girls Club breakfast, and he was really quite inspiring. And I thought it was a great turnout. I mean, it was, all the tables were full, and I hope they raised a lot of money, because that was one of the points of being there, because it does benefit the Boys and Girls Club, both Moore Park and CB, really benefits the community as a whole, helps a lot of people, especially I think in Moore Park in the early years there wasn't anything out there, and I mean it really helped that community. So I think we all should be grateful that we have the Boys and Girls Club, frankly, doing the job that they do. I also attended the Strather meeting on the future of a new building. We looked at options and came down to a plan on how the Strather board should approach fundraising and what their goals should be, and more realistic goals, I would say, about what it would take to have a new building. And so the building they're in was actually a donation from the city, so there was no cost to the district except getting it there. And it does need some upgrading. But they are going to probably have a sub account for the purpose of refurbishing and upgrading the existing facility. I think that's probably where we ended up with the most realistic approach, because a new building would be $3 or $4 million probably. And although Pat would love to have a full building, we'll have to see if it's realistic or not. Probably not. I don't know if any of you knew Helen Beebe. Helen passed away last month. She was 100. She was the first female principal here in CB. She was an amazing woman. And I just like to adjourn the meeting in her name. I'll have to do some research to find out how to send the letter, and I'll try to do that as quickly as possible. But she served on the school board. She was retired from the school district. She was on the American Cancer Society board for years and did a lot of other community effort events in her lifetime here. And as a community, we were honored to have her. So I don't know if any of you others people knew her, but I did serve with her on the American Cancer Society board, and she was a great lady, really a great lady, and a pioneer, actually, to be the first female principal. That's it.
Be happy to adjourn in her honor and her memory. Director Avila, would you like to go next?
Sure. First of all, Jill and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago. When my family, when I was 12 years old, moved to Simi Valley, the first school I attended here was Hillside Junior High School, and Helen Beebe was my first principal in the school district. So, and I have to say, a great lady who, in the years following, was extremely supportive of me in other ways. So she truly will be missed. I also attended the Boys and Girls Club breakfast, which really was a great event. And I have to say, I have to throw out props to Jill Avila, who chaired the event and did an amazing job. So it was really awesome. I think it's, I don't know if all of us have done it, but I also saw the activity center recreation area presentation, and Douglas and Jonathan and Wayne all did an excellent job with that. I'm going to have a few comments about that a little later, but it was an excellent presentation, an awesome design, and something that we really have to look forward to. I went to the Soccer Foundation meeting, and I stayed till about 7:20, and not much was going on yet, but I did have a chance to speak with Danny and a couple of the other people who were waiting to start the meeting there. And I think they're obviously, what their biggest interest is finding out when the improvements at Rancho Santa Susana Park will be completed. So, and they even joked about, you're going to give us the standard answer, 2 years. And I said, yeah, I gave you that earlier in the year. I'm not even as confident about that now because we have so many projects. But I think in terms of board business, that's probably their biggest concern. I really wanted to attend the alt-rec holiday party again, but I was not feeling well that evening. So for all concerned, I felt it was best not to attend. I've already done part of this next part, but every year since I've been on the board, I've done a little bit of a year-end review and look to the future, and I've already kind of reviewed the year in terms of complimenting Josh. There are a couple of things going forward that I really would like us to look at and emphasize and consider. One, while I think that the project priorities workshop is here to stay and was a great thing, I do think even though we're really good with money now and we're really good with the budget, we do need to be cautious in terms of how we spend our taxpayer money. While I made the decision and I'm still okay with it, I'm not the most comfortable with the fact that we're spending over $300,000 at some point down the road, and by the time we do it, it could be more, on an equestrian facility that is seemingly seldom used, and it's speculative as to how much it's going to be used in the future. Another one that I want to point out, and there was some comment made about what's going on over there. I think Strathern Historical Park is a great place, and I'm a student of history, and I think it's great stuff. But I've thought about the fact that since I've been on the board, we've spent upwards of $1 million in improvements there, and Dan and I talk about this a lot, but probably nearly $500,000 in terms of staffing and keeping up the facility. And I think it's a great thing, and I think it's the right thing that we've provided the land for the park and that we're involved with it. But we do need to take a look at just how much that involvement is going to be, considering what takes place. I don't know if the answer is finding another community partner, if the answer is scaling back on the hours of operation. I don't know what the answer is, but and I even, and much to my surprise, when Dan told me this, I just assumed we at least make some money on the weddings we do there, but my understanding from what Dan told me is when you consider staffing and those types of things, even that is basically just a break-even proposition. So it's just something that we need to look at, and we need to make it work, but we need to find a better way and a more effective and efficient way to make it work. The next thing I want to talk about, and this relates to those items, it relates to the activity center. I think everyone knows I take a strong interest in making sure that with events that aren't what I would call need-based events, but things such as golf, that we're making sure that supply and demand are meeting when we're setting our rates. And one thing that I didn't give Brian Reed enough credit for at the time is when he went out and did his own survey of other golf courses. And when I look at that now, I really appreciate that. The problem is, Brian has a golf course to run and he does it really well. And a survey of one person doesn't completely get the job done, and yet he took the time to do that. And when I think about the activity center and the millions of dollars that we're going to spend on it and the beautiful design, when I think about whether it's BMX or equestrian or Strathern Park or any of the things you want to make, lighting at the fields, we know from when interest groups come in here and speak to us. I know Director Dennard and I are known for knocking on doors from time to time and getting input there, and we get good anecdotal information from that. But any good medium to large size organization, certainly non-governmental organization, but something that can carry over to the government, does adequate surveying to make sure their money is being spent properly, to make sure that they're doing the right things with their money. And I really think we need to take a look, whether it's our own staff or spending a little money, at doing a better job of fully surveying the public so that we know that all this taxpayer money that we're putting in to these different things is being spent wisely, and that we're doing what the public wants us to do. And we've had some efforts in that regard, and we have some information, but we don't have the full picture. And I'll give an example. One of the things when I was present for the Activity Center presentation that I was asking about and that I pointed out is, this is going to be a great facility and it's going to cost us a lot of money. But what's most important right now is that we get it open for the programs and the classes, and sure, to have some wow effect to draw the community there. But it doesn't mean we necessarily have to rush to get it all done at once. It would be wiser to make sure we're spending the money in a way the public wants us to spend the money, and that we're making use of that facility in the best way possible. So one of the things I think we should look at is get the key things open, get some of the wow factor open, but don't feel in a rush to spend all the money at one time when we're not even sure that all of the things that we're discussing are things the public is going to want. I think the slide is a great suggestion. If we took a survey, do I think the public would be happy with that? I think likely. I really do. But do we know that for sure? We really don't. I suggested a gym. I think the public would be really receptive to that for the reasons at the time I suggested it. But do we really have enough information, or are we spending money on something that we're not really sure of? And I point that out with the Activity Center, but it really goes with a lot of things we do. We might be more efficient and more effective in spending our money if we did the proper surveying. And so that's one of the things that I think we really need to look into as a board and as a district going forward. And I told myself I'd limit myself to 3, so I'm going to mention one more. The other thing that I'd like to see us do going forward, and I mentioned this earlier in the year, and I know the staff has started the process, and I know Chair Gray is supportive of this as well. But I really want us to start trying to put more of an emphasis to the extent that we can as a park district on mental health, whether it's through education, awareness, working with other agencies. And part of mental health, of course, is providing the physical activity as we did during the pandemic. But since the pandemic, whether it's athletes or entertainers or even our friends and neighbors, we've all become aware of the importance of mental health in our society and how it relates to physical health as well. So I hope we continue to increase our emphasis in that area going forward. Now for my 3 New Year's resolutions. I could do a bunch of them. All right, the first one. Now, they're not actually New Year's resolutions. I have to say, take that back. New Year's wishes. These are New Year's wishes. The semantics can be put any way they want to be put. But the city told us that they were going to give us land for the BMX track. We've prepped that land. We're ready to go on that land. And it was really earlier this year that we were first supposed to have that meeting. Whatever you want to call it, a promise, a statement, however you want to look at it, my wish is that the city does the right thing and gives us that land as soon as possible. They reiterated intention to come up with something that we like even better back in July, and that was supposed to happen 3 months later, and that time has passed. And we've got some great city council members. We've got a great city staff, but one of the things that I keep hearing, and it really bothers me, is, well, you know, just have them put up a temporary track. And it's like being thrown out there by council members and people with the city as if it's something, you just slop down some dirt and everything's okay and they can do a track. And we know from our staff and from the district manager that's not true. And if there is something that the city knows that makes it so easy to do that we're not capable of doing, then by all means, please go out there and put out a temporary track. We'd love to have that for our BMX community. But if you're going to make statements like that and you think it's something that's easy to do, then do it. We want whatever we can for BMX to bring it back to the community. So that's for my wish, is that the city gives us the land, and if they think a temporary BMX track is the way to go, let's do it. Give it to us. We'll help you out with that, but let's do something. The second thing I wish for is continued increased involvement by our employees. One of the things that I've done, and part of my new school approach, and I know Director Dennard and Director Gray have brought that with them as well, is to interact more with the staff. And I got a different perspective on it this year. One of the things I realized in going around, whether it's with the recreation department or maintenance workers, man, I was led by some people to believe that I wasn't well liked. But one thing that's really cool is, I mean, most of these people really like me. That's kind of nice. But one thing that I've really learned this year, more than any other year, in dealing with the staff is in listening to them, is that you can learn from them. And what they really want, I mean, they love it when you come by and say hello, but that's really only a small part of the battle. It's really listening to what the employees have to say. It's taking their input seriously. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do what every employee or every staff member wants you to do, but to genuinely take that into account and to include that as part of your equation in what you're doing going forward. And that's something that finally has clicked to me. It's not a question of just going there and making small talk with them. It's certainly not going there and giving them direction on what to do. That's our executive staff and the rest of our staff's responsibility. But it's genuinely listening to them and making that part of your equation in terms of decisions that we're making here as board members and decisions that our staff is making. And one of the things that I really want to say here, and Dan, I just can't emphasize the importance of it. I would love for you to get out and at some point during the next year and genuinely talk to all the employees and all the staff members. Meetings have their place and they are important, but interacting with staff and with employees and genuinely taking to heart what they have to say and including it in the decision-making process is the most valuable thing that any of us could do, whether we're board members or Dan, you as the district manager. And I know I worked for 4 different district attorneys when I was a prosecutor. And to be honest with you, I didn't like 3 of them a hell of a whole lot. I liked Jackie Lacey a lot, but what I did respect is that even though they had a dual position, both as an administrator and as an elected official, once a year at least, they would make their way around across the county to try to meet every employee at every office. And there's no substitute for that in terms of morale and in terms of valuable information that we can receive in making our decisions. So my second wish is for increased employee involvement going forward. And then my third wish is something that I emphasize often publicly and here in front of the board. But my third wish is that we continue to improve and that we can be the best we can be. I think you all know that I believe in a new school approach. You know, I'm not a fan of this is how we've always done it, or this is how we did it 10 years ago, or if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm a fan of always finding a way to be better. And so my wish is that we always find a way to be better. And I'm gonna finish up with this. My poor wife doesn't like it when I do corny stuff like this, and she's here to listen to this, but I have to do this. Recently, I was reacquainted with a song that when I was much younger that I loved. I'm sure most of you know who John Denver is. And he wrote about, and this is a community that loves its open space, but he wrote about protecting open space and wildlife way before it was cool to take that type of a stance. And a song that I heard recently, I can't get out of my mind, and I can't get the lyrics out of my mind. It's a seemingly simple song. It's 2 minutes long. It doesn't have a lot of lyrics. It has great instrumentals, but it's titled "The Eagle and the Hawk." And in that song, in the first verse, John Denver discusses and describes our open space, our beauty through the eyes of the eagle and through the eyes of the hawk. And in the second verse, John Denver uses the majestic and graceful nature of the eagle and of the hawk to provide hope and inspiration for how we can always be better and how we should try to be the best we can be. So with that, I'm going to do it. I am the eagle. I live in high country, in rocky cathedrals that reach to the sky. I am the hawk, and there's blood on my feathers. But time is still turning, they soon will be dry. And all those who see me, all who believe in me, share in the freedom I feel when I fly. Come dance with the west wind and touch on the mountaintops. Sail over the canyons and up to the stars. And reach for the heavens and hope for the future. And all that we can be, and not what we are. So to our wonderful residents who guide us and who support us, to our dedicated employees who turn our visions into reality, I wish that you can draw the same inspiration to always want to be better and to be the best you can be. We have a great, wonderful community of residents, and we have an amazing set of employees. And to all of them, happy holidays and happy New Year.
Thank you. Director Denver.
To quote John Denver, thank God I'm a country boy. I like that you ended it with that song. I added it to my playlist to listen to it later. And when Mark Johnson was on the board, sometimes I'd be listening to an argument play out, and Mark would inevitably say, "That's the way we've always done it." And I would just watch, look over for your reaction at that part, because I could sense in that moment that would not be a convincing argument for you, to put it lightly. I'm interested in talking about in the upcoming year, moving on from the partnership with the city on the BMX track. That's the way it's going to be. They put it off multiple times. We have our soil down there. We have a plan sitting in my garage right next to my bike. By our bikes is the plans that we thought we had. I thought we had an agreement. And if it's not going to happen that way, maybe we discuss going in a different direction. For the activity center, I know we might discuss that at a future point in more detail. I'm interested in some of those ideas that you expressed, but I'm also concerned with timeline, like delaying projects, but I do understand that. Eagle Scout Brody Denham will be coming to an upcoming meeting. I asked our staff to invite him. The reason I mentioned tonight is he completed this project. He fixed a problem that I had with this project. The Mount McCoy has two trails to it. One is the longer trail with a lot of switchbacks, and the other one's by the Reagan Library. The water district, I believe, has an access road and it says no trespassing, but there's a trail right next to it. And nobody seemed to mind. But now with Brody's project, it says how far you are to Mount McCoy, and there's a sign right there, so you know you can hike there. And then when you get to the top, you worked with our historical society to write a narrative or a plaque about the history of the area. And the reason I pointed out is the entire trip, round trip hike is 1.5 miles. So Ed, as you mentioned mental health, that's a very accessible trail. If someone says they're not into hiking, well, that's an easy one. You could look at the Reagan Library, you could look across St. Valley, you could spend some time up on a hill. It's really accessible, so good job, Brody. I'm going to schedule a meeting with staff to talk about that California Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. I've been putting more thought into it, and I want us to take a lead in getting it done, not allowing it to happen, but setting as a goal for it to happen, and talking about how we could do that. There's been, I did attend the Fields meeting after Ed was there, the beginning part to it, I attend towards the end, and I have the same feedback, they update on projects. I've seen a few food trucks in our parks, and I mentioned specifically one that's been by Duck Pond. And I don't know all the rules that might apply, because it appears that they're on a city street, but they're putting flags up in a park to advertise their business. And my concern is, it's also right in front of a restaurant with a hardworking family that pays their bills and follows all the regulations. And then in our park right there, there's a business that opened up that may or may not, I don't know all the rules, but I'm just, I've noticed that. And if there are rules set up by the city or the county, and they're following that, that's good to know. In the upcoming year, my fellow board members, I'm going to tell you that people will be approaching you about schools and their interest in school district business and what happens in schools. And I'd ask that before you listen to them about something they saw on the national news of what happens in schools, that you consider maybe our schools are not the national news. So before they say, oh, these crazy things are happening. I've seen candidates locally that watch too much cable news and think crazy things are happening, but don't spend time on school campuses. So they saw school campuses, they'd see patriotic young people doing service projects and participating in extracurricular activities. But when I hear them run, that's not what they're talking about. So I would suggest turn off the cable news and go watch a high school sporting event. And if you have questions, come talk to me before believing something that some of these candidates say. Elaine, you were part of one of my lesson plans this week, and I wanted to surprise you with that. So the lesson plan this week is we're learning about the importance of leisure activities in the late 1800s. Hold on, it gets more exciting than that. And what we learned was, in the beginning, sports were looked down upon to watch and to participate in. But then in the late 1800s, we earned it. We made some more money as a country, we had leisure time. So people started playing sports and it was seen as a popular thing. And sports clubs started to form, but often they were restrictive and did not allow women in them, African Americans, and Jewish people. So I wanted to come up with a relevant example of why joining a club is important for networking and for service in your community. And I found a very old newspaper clipping from when you joined Rotary. And what I mentioned was that for my students, their families were limited in two ways. One is not drawing upon the talents of our community to serve, and that changed with you joining Rotary. And then also not having the opportunity to become a leader and to meet people these things. So although we were talking about sports clubs at the beginning, I found a relevant example with you in it. Kate, I believe you had mentioned before a board retreat. I'm interested in that if we bring that up in the future for next year.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea.
And then lastly, Ed, I did appreciate that song and I'll be listening to it later. That's it for me.
I'll keep my report incredibly brief. I do want to thank again, I know Ed already did, Douglas, Jonathan, Wayne for the presentation on the Activity Center. I know Kate and I did that together, but it was a fantastic presentation and enjoyed hurling questions at staff and them having some great responses. And so I really appreciate it. Zach, I know Dan, a bunch of people took a bunch of time to answer questions and really appreciated that. And then other than that, I attended Assemblymember Irwin's open house for her new office that's located in Thousand Oaks. That was a great opportunity to meet with some colleagues in the region and the area, as well as talk with the assembly member about ongoing projects and all of that. She also, or it wasn't her, but had on a TV presenting when we did the check at the local community pool, had the interviews and the photos playing during that. So every couple of minutes I got to hear people shout that Josh is on TV again, because I think that was just the video they had on loop. So people who I think may have had a beer or two were very excited whenever we popped up on TV and cheered again. But I'll wish everybody a Happy New Year, and Brian, I will let you know as soon as I get to the local park and check out their disc golf areas. I'll take some photos and share what's happening out here. Other than that, Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you again to staff and everybody, and see you all soon. And that'll take us to item 12, report by district manager.
Thank you, Chair and Board. MLK Day of Service plans are underway and being advertised. I think the staff over the last couple of years, the board had asked that we get out a little earlier and a little more often on trying to get people to participate and volunteer for that day, and we've done that this year. We've had a lot of advertising and talk about it in the community. I will say we've got some good project plans. Last year it rained, and Plan B we put together at the last minute. Plan B this year, I think the staff really wanted to bring value to the projects, and if we're going to do it, we're going to spend time on it. So Plan B this year is to move it to Saturday following Monday, and just try to get as many people and staff on the following Saturday. Brian, you had asked about some indoor stuff. We really couldn't think anything of significant value to do indoors, so the staff thought it would be best if we're going to commit to those projects and they're of value to the district, which they are, we should try to focus and get those done. So Plan A, hopefully, is no rain and we can get all that work done. And Plan B, if we council, will be to try to get as many people to come back and do their day of service on Saturday to honor the day and honor the meeting of the day. I'm going to meet with the Madison County HOA. Zach and I are in January. They're the neighbors to the new open space we got. They were interested in what our plans are for the trail and use of the property, so it's more of an informational thing for them, and we'll take any input they might have. Add on my list, I have mental health. The staff is working on that. We did meet on that, and we do want to reach out to you and see if you'd be willing to come in and sit with the staff and kind of talk about what we're doing, and also we can pick your brain about what you might want to see as improvement in that area.
And I think Josh wanted to be part of that.
Yeah, so maybe we'll set up a meeting with Josh and Ed to contribute to that discussion to make sure we're following through on what you guys want. I had mentioned this, we are going to schedule another active shooter training for our staff so that we're prepared for that. The police department's agreed to do that. I don't have a date yet, but I'll let you know when I get it. Committee assignments with the appointment of the chair. I'll be sending out the committee assignment email, the regular process, tomorrow. Arroyo Simi ribbon cutting, we're going to do that probably the last week of January. I don't have an exact firm date yet, but we're going to be targeting the last week of January for the Arroyo Simi ribbon cutting. After the ASC Phase 3, you've seen all that individually now. I do plan to bring that probably in the next month or so to the full board and public meeting to review those plans and get direction from you. where we are now is we need final direction from you so that Douglas and his team can start the construction drawing. So we'll bring that to open session publicly here in the next month and a half, 4 to 6 weeks, I would say. Strathern, Elaine and Kate mentioned it. My intent is to brief the other board members on our discussion with the Strathern Historical Society, so you're aware of what occurred in that meeting, and I will do that. I'm going to be out next week, just between Christmas and the Friday, so Tuesday to Friday. I'm going to take some time off that week, which I usually do that week. Upcoming board meetings, we actually don't have much on January 3rd. There is the opportunity to maybe not have a meeting on January 3rd if the board would not like to do that. Right now I have the golf consultant, which was going to be on this meeting, but for circumstances we moved it back, I guess it's forward to January. So I have that January 3rd, and an award of contract for the Knowles Park project could wait to the next meeting. So I would look for direction if the board was still interested in having the meeting on January 3rd.
Would the staff appreciate it if we didn't have a meeting on the 3rd? January? You get no comment. That's a yes.
We'll do whatever we'll do the work if you guys want the meeting.
Both of those things can wait for 2 weeks, is that?
It's up to you guys.
I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, me too.
I mean,
Nothing else is coming up, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we will post the cancellation for the 3rd, and our next meeting will be January 17th. On January 17th, we will have the golf discussion item about where we want to head with fees and analysis of fees, award of contract for Knowles Park. We got the scout presentation, Brian, that you just mentioned, him showing up. We'll do committee assignments that meeting. Depending on meeting with Ed, we're thinking about maybe talking about mental health a little bit, but we want to get direction from Ed and Josh first. And then potentially the activity center phase 3 in January, maybe first meeting in February to review that in open session and get direction. With that, that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Dan, Madison HOA?
Yes.
When was that meeting?
January 22nd, I believe.
What was the question? The mic is off.
The Madison HOA for the new open space property meeting?
I'll have to get that to you. I think it's the 3rd week of January on a Tuesday, I believe. Do you have it?
Monday the 22nd at 6:30.
6:30 p.m.?
Correct.
We could talk later about that, but I'd like to be invited to that just to get feedback. My goal is we have public open space. I want to make sure it's open to the public.
Yeah.
So I'd like to listen to their feedback, and I'll let the staff take the lead, but just come with me on this.
Okay.
Any other questions? That's all I have.
All right. Then that'll take us to item 13, closed session. Legal counsel, do you mind reading that?
Not at all. Closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.95. The claimant is Christy L. Grayson, and the agency claimed against is the Rancho Simi Recreation and Park District. Do we have any discussion?
Any public comment on this item?
There's none in the room, Chair.
All right. Are we going to have a reportable action?
Yes, we could, probably.
Okay. All right, so we will return out of closed session.
Okay, guys.
All right. Back out of closed session. Council, would you mind reading off?
No problem at all. The board unanimously voted to reject the claim of Christy L. Grayson.
Thank you. That will take us to 14, adjournment. This evening we'll adjourn in memory of Helen Beatty. Thank you very much. Have a happy New Year, everyone.